On the way out of Honolulu, we, as Ostino and Passiona, noted thousands upon thousands of monks spaced about 10 feet apart along the road to the airport. Someone important would be coming by in a while. The monks were in the airport too, and on the tarmac as well, many even along the runway.
How do we hear music? As if we had earphones from iPods?
It's the old Grandmaster, he can do that. See that man getting out of the limo and approaching the black jet?
That's him?
Yes. He retired at age 100 from the leadership of the Ninja Empire to do some other things, within or without.
What things?
Well, let's just say that I wouldn't want to be the head of state where that plane lands.
The jet has missiles attached.
It has 16 fire-and-forget Hellfire missiles on it, plus 3 other firing systems on it. That particular jet is called the Angel of Death.
Where's he going?
No one knows, but wherever he goes, the world will be a much better place after he does whatever he has to do.
Will it be done with the jet?
No, not likely unless attacked.
How then will this one old guy do anything?
He will arrive on the breeze as soft as the wind, bestow his blessing, then evaporate like the water afterwards. For the most part, hopefully never seen and never known.
Or he will die trying.
Perhaps, but then all the other Grandmasters will try in turn.
Godspeed.
I'll tell you the whole story on the flight back to Chicago. These are desperate times. 13.75 years of evolution are at stake, for we have not yet colonized space.
We're not gonna make it?
The TOE Center was able to determine the future of humankind given the present state.
And
humankind again had no future, for they no longer existed.
The populace of the New Iran could no longer be shielded from the real world by the clerics and the Holy Supreme Leader, for they had the internet and had even adopted some of the freedoms of Western ways. Yet the crackdowns had still been working, to some extent, but when the nuclear reactors had been destroyed, the billions wasted on their construction had become quite apparent, as well as the fact that Iran had plenty of oil and didn't even need them, but to attempt destruction. Yet to easily squash this sentiment, the clerics stirred up some of the old anti-American feelings and added to the ever-present hatred of Israel. Furthermore, they closed the Straits of Hormuz, first by just declaring it, and more finally through a naval battle in which they of course lost, which blocked it. Even though the center of the straits was in international waters, it had become clogged with the debris of sunken ships and had become totally unusable. Non-nuclear missiles, some containing poison gas, had meanwhile been launched upon Israel, doing quite a bit of death and damage. Israel then laid waste to more of Iran. At first, the Sunnis did not so much mind the downfall of the Shiites, but for their joint antagonism for the West. But then Israel repelled more attacks from the other Arab nations, and then some, as in 10 eyes for an eye. The Shia and the Sunni soon united against their common enemies to have OPEC halt all shipments of oil. Several months later, a massive Allied invasion of the Middle East began, while the Arabs began a counterattack against Israel and even set fire to their own oil fields, lest they be captured. Israel, about to be overrun, used tactical nukes on the approaching hordes, as well full nukes on the Middle East. Now the oil fields were also radioactive, and so of no use whatsoever for hundreds of years. During the war, the world's reserve oil supplies had much dwindled, the remaining pumps unable to keep up with the demand, much of it going to the military or to the rich, but they too eventually began to go dry. Russia mobilized, it still having oil. However, cruise missiles fired from Allied nuclear subs then destroyed its military and its refineries. In the years to come, all the world's economies failed, a minor nuclear winter ensued, infrastructures fell apart, and chaos and disease did away with much of the Earth's population in time. Global warming then climaxed and flooded what was left of all coastal cities. Canada became subtropical and thus became a refuge for a few good humans. Those left began to live simple. They hunted game and supplanted it with whatever they could grow or find. They were perhaps of a new genesis, the germ of a new world, one focused on the actual living of life, for the old distractions were now few and far between. The religious zealot kneels on his prayer mat, talking with Allah for the 6th time today. The mission is on. Many non-believers will die. The bomber purifies himself, ready to enter paradise, sure of a higher place near the great Allah. The zealot stands up. Takpara shoots him dead. Takpara easily entered one of the new and nearly complete Iranian nuclear facilities as its new janitor, having replaced the former one exactly by using the improved Botox. He began replacing the innards of the battery-operated floodlights that were for power outages. Soon they contained bombs, all 16 of them, and were near enough to the main pillars to bring down the entire structure from within. This was the only way, for there were 5 levels of reinforced steel and concrete above, which ensured that what had happened the last time could not happen again via any kind of bunker buster bombs. Takpara would activate all the timers, then depart this job as best he could. He even wrote a new Broadway musical play as he bided his time, then provided rhyme for all of John Milton's blank verse. Mid-morning finally arrived. This was it. He sent the signal to the timers, and then wheeled his janitor cart towards the elevators. He boarded, along with 2 important-looking officials, and the elevator headed up to the top.
Our supreme leader has spoken to Allah and has received approval for the complete destruction of Israel.
Just about then, they all heard the loud rumbles of the coordinated explosions, then the thunderous collapse of the imploding building as all of its layers pancaked when the support pillars were all blown away. Only the elevator stuck out of the dusty rubble, the door opening 6 stories above the now airy pit. The 2 officials quickly ran out into the dust and fell through the open air to their deaths, joining all those below that were trapped within. Takpara was soon rescued and sent by ambulance to a hospital. He decided to go to an airport instead, writing a brand new opera along the way. Then he went about solving the financial crisis, for he had a few hours to spare. The ultra-Orthodox Wahhabi sect of Islam had spread like an unruly weed across the country and beyond, choking out all forward and rational thinking, silencing all dissenters within and without the faith, and damning millions of people to a belief system that had more in common with the Stone Age than the 21st century. The flawed concept of good that now included the ever more increasing wishes of Allah, of course, had led to all of the contrary as being labeled and seen as an evil that was to be excised everywhere by God's will. Yet, there was still a source at the top that could be nipped in the bud, lest this sect grow even further, sprouting more and more weeds that would blossom with the woe that would eventually spread to the point of thickening all around until it imprisoned too many minds, like some old and unattended English garden hedgerow, whose dark clouds and roots of actual evil would then begin that which would result in the end of all life on earth. Whoever would have thought that making things up could bring so much harm upon the world? The black stealth jet, named the Angel of Death, crossed the border and landed unobserved on a long driveway in the dark at a country house maintained by the CIA in Iran. An old man, made up to appear as old as he really was, which was 100 years, stepped out and got into a dilapidated car whose floorboards on the passenger side had worn all the way through. The old man kicked them through a bit more, making the opening even larger. He drove and parked the car near the mosque, noting the men with rifles on the roof, one even with a handheld missile that could take out a helicopter. The longtime supreme leader, anointed and ordained by Allah himself, would be arriving soon on his only outing, accompanied by 4 bodyguards, 1 fore, 1 aft, and another on each side. As usual, any standers-by would know to stay clear or be harshly kicked away, and yet one old man was walking so slowly as to never make it out of the way, even with the shouts of the imams at the doors shooing him ever onward. The supreme leader arrived just then, eyeing the old man, then presumably dismissing him as not one to be concerned about. The bodyguards nevertheless hurled insults at the old man, the only effect being to stop him in his tracks, right in front of them, about 6 feet away, and still blocking the path to the doors. The lead bodyguard went up to kick the frail body to send it flying away, but the old and former Grandmaster West held onto his foot and shattered the bodyguard's knee with his cane. Before anyone on the ground could even react, and before those on the roof could come to bend and look straight down beyond and over some obstructions, the Supreme Leader was dead from a lightning chop to the throat and fell back and onto his rear bodyguard. The old man leapt over the body as if on a football run as a halfback just as an explosion went off inside.
The future that was never to be at all now continues on in another way. All is indeed an extra time from here on out, but no guideposts remain to light the way.
Whatever shall be, unless it should not be.
Ever and anon is never for sure, but you remain, Rascal, as ever the butterfly at the edge of forever.
Does forever ever end, dying out? Do unbreakable basics ever wear out? Well, once every 1,000 years, the bird of time flies over Mount Everest, and on some of those occasions, a part of a feather falls down upon the mountain. When the mountain has worn itself away, the end of forever has then arrived that day. All was now back to normal, but for the exponential global warming threat, some time had been bought. 20 hotspots suddenly appeared in California, all rather in a row, reaching temperatures of over 1,000 degrees. A tsunami sprung from the Atlantic and washed over Florida, coast to coast. Another one came forth in the mid-Pacific, from the deep Marianas Trench, sinking Baja. Mexico City disappeared into a volcanic eruption. Quebec province was severed from Canada by quakes and floated back towards France, which is where they wanted to be anyway. Africa rose 8 feet in an hour. The Indian Ocean washed out Sri Lanka and entered the Indian subcontinent. Siberia sunk into a mush of methane gas. Sicily got the boot from Italy. Alaska gushed oil all over the place. Turkey was devoured by Hungary. Arkansas became just Ark. The Eiffel Tower, Eiffel, lived up to its name and tipped over. Gibraltar fell and sunk and closed off the Mediterranean Sea. Ostino and Passiona were using Rascal's backup jet and were about to land in LA when the jet suddenly veered off and applied full power to its engines. All were aghast to see the LAX airport fracture and slide into the ocean. Nearly out of gas, they landed at the base of the nearby mountains. Their only clue was that the mountains would be safe. In India, Greg and Melanie headed north toward the Himalayas. Mohan remembered his youth and went up the mountains near Mysore, where he lived. Lesky climbed up the backbone of New Zealand. Graham was picked up by Papa, and they were soon off to the Canadian Rockies in a large truck. Yellowstone National Park blew Magna through its 40-mile radius, a prelude to the big one that was still 30,000 years overdue. The Amazon jungle flooded. Mauna Kea erupted and buried Hilo, Hawaii. Krakatoa came to life. Sumatra went under. Finally, the San Andreas Fault could take it no more and moved 1,200 feet. What was left of California had become a small island. New Orleans was washed away. Mexico moved into Texas, which indeed once it was. Notre Dame Cathedral in France crumbled away into dust. Russia shook and shook. Austin and Passiona climbed the mountains, noting the water seeping toward off in the distance.
This is hard work.
Yes, but didn't all that tennis help?
It did perhaps, but tennis courts are level, not uphill. I'm using muscles seldom used. And didn't you climb ladders at your job?
Yes, but not enough of them, I guess. Oh my, look at the size of that wave arriving in the distance.
My God, it's a 100-foot wall of water.
We are now on the new west coast of America.
Rascal's jet just went under.
They had to walk perhaps 4 miles left and right to make 1 mile upward, much of it sideways and winding about such as a mountain road would do.
We'll have to get above this stuff soon.
Mind if I smoke?
Go ahead, the world is turning into one big ashtray.
A few hours of struggling on and ever upwards through the chill air, and they broke through into the light again.
Warmth has returned.
The sunlight is scattering off of the dust layer that it can hardly penetrate.
They came to a glade that had a stream-fed pool of clear water that ever amounted from the melting snow atop the mountains. It was perhaps 200 feet across and was nicely tucked into the towering trees and the mountainside.
This is home.
It was as hot as Hades this morning, but little did I know that the underworlded Pluto was hell-bent on extracting revenge for his demotion to the infernal regions. The bright afternoon turned as black as Satan's heart, as the ominous-type clouds soon hid the mountaintops. I lit a candle. Above me, light burnt not the clouds away. Below me, the earth yet turned under my feet. Within me, unworded dreams haunted my soul. Around me, hell's master poured blackness on the ground. Satan had broken free from his block of ice where Dante had placed him in the heart of hell, showering the earth with hail and a hell of a storm that had goodness on the run. It was he, the devil, that once said through Milton's pen that it was better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. Now he had upped it to, it's better to reign on earth. So I said to myself, Self, are you still there or have you gone apparent? I was still there in a netherworld, swirling into the abyss of fire and brimstone thrown about by Lucifer, now promoted to the king of darkness. The dark symphony played the notes of doom as ice crystals, big and small, pelted the world around as hailstones that magically stayed frozen on the warm ground, almost an inch deep now. Hell was freezing over, and so now I could walk on water, and did so in the yard, amazing all, wishfully dancing on the grave of Beelzebub. The bolts had flown, missing me, for I was still here. To the north, far beyond the hills and over the border, a rainbow arced towards me, landing at my feet and then colored me and my heart with happiness. Tonight, the big yellow honeymoon rose full, which meant that roses will soon bloom that way too, marking the beginning of summer. Toward the end of a sunny day, a storm came and washed away, and the sunset clouds, being glad, held a party for the returning lad. The sun then peaked and soft shone into the mist of the departing squall. Its light split into particolors lone, separating each from the all. A bouquet of colored rays swirled into sight and promised good weather for the rest of the night. The rainbow lit up the east, as long we attended the feast of both the east and the west, till into darkness we descended blessed. The stars guided the homeward flight by shining their jeweled lights of ruby, emerald, and sapphire in living colors of blazing fire. Yes, ice cubes were falling this afternoon in the mountains of the Hudson River Valley in New York from a hailstorm, followed by such a torrential rain that you couldn't even see through it. I quickly went to buy some grass seed to put on a steep muddy hill that was eroding, and so used this perfect time to seed it and rake it over, pulling out some large weeds to eat later, myself ever slipping and sliding down the slope, often touching some big rocks that then just easily rolled down the hill. I also fell in the mud once. I was dirty, sweating and dripping and almost done when heavy dusk arrived. The fog settling into the hollows all around, creating a kind of primeval scene. Then the full August moon appeared, and so I was able to finish. I stood and rested a bit. Some ancient frequencies began resonating in me, my brain and mind synchronizing and sympathizing with them. It felt like I was early sapient. Then I took a short walk down the road and jumped into a pond that was clear, cool, and deep. The full moon's reflections on some ripples formed two straight strands, about 6 feet long. pearls of little moons that seemed to be underneath the surface of the water. If I closed one eye, then there was only one strand. This was life being experienced, a result of what is. The message speaks. The messenger is secondary, unknown even. Live it, love it, be it. The air beneath it couldn't get out of the way of the rock, rising in temperature 10 times more than the sun is hot. Everything and everyone crinkled and crackled in the heat, and 1,000 cubic kilometers of earth blew from beneath. This shock wave, radiating at about the speed of light, would sweep just about everything else out of sight. From further away, one would see a blinding light, and then the unimaginable grandeur of an apocalyptic sight. A rolling wall of silent darkness as black as midnight. It would reach to the heavens, filling the entire field of view, traveling far beyond the speed of sound toward me and you. A bewildering veil of turmoil would fulfill our vision during those few last minutes before we met oblivion. A rose's prime lasts for but an hour of morn. Flowering and free, then fragile and forlorn, the petals float to earth, and they signify that beauty's past, for all that's left is the thorn. Called the Island of Love, Tahiti is ever shrouded in legend. In Tahitian mythology, the supreme creator deity was Ta'aroa, also called Rua'i Tupra, the source of growth. Ta'aroa emerged from a cosmic egg and started the process of creation. To fill the emptiness around him, he used part of the egg to make the sky and the other part to create the earth. Satisfied with his accomplishment, he filled the world with all the creatures and things that are now found in it. The Tahitians believed that Ta'aroa sent both blessings and curses, and they tried to appease him with human sacrifices. The couple landed in Papeete and stayed in a hut built on posts, under which the ocean's waves splashed and sang. Now south of the moon, they could see the Southern Cross and the Magellanic Cloud galaxies glittering on black velvet. Just before dawn, amid the dew and moss, elves ride on a moonbeam made of bugloss and see the North Star and the Southern Cross in the same sky, most all the way across. The recent adventures eventually receded and faded. As the couple settled into island time and the traditions of fishing, cooking, and singing and dancing on the beach, having an entire month to spend in French Polynesia, courtesy of our Puff. The Egyptian road may be long and hard, but there is a soft, sweet valley at the end. The flowers bloom once again. The born-again operative walked for miles on the sand, not an easy thing, then headed toward a weathered and sinking sphinx-like monument noting, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear, My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. The operative added further to this meaning, all that you love and cherish will one day be gone. Even all of the works of human beings will disappear in time. Everything with which we adorn ourselves shall ever dissipate and vanish. Yet, he strode on. All that you love and cherish will one day be gone. Ah, but not yet, thought Frederick, not yet. The secret chronicles continue, now far from what we would call reality, lying betwixt the enchanting masks of light that dwell about and between the frames of our living film. Rascal sat back and read this amazing report, sent by his operative Frederick, who had somehow been reborn back into the glory of the living of this life. Gollum had dragged me into the concealed burial chamber of the Queen of the Pyramid, herself nearly half as old as time. Yes, the Egyptians almost had it right. with their potions of elixir brewed to wake the dead, but they erred in embalming and wrapping the deceased, thereby ensuring that they would never wake, thus their Book of the Dead rather than a Book of Life. My heart fluttered back toward life from the 3,000-year-old aroma of the chamber's tonic air that was the very spirit of life.
This is true, my love, that the lightning again flashes in the light of your eyes. The clouds in my own heart explode with the soft new beating of yours. This is true, my love. Your sweet lips become as red as those of a blushing bride. This is true, my love, that the seed of the tree of life once again flowers within you. Your mind awakens to follow the guiding rhythms of my own pure soul. The night shall ever weep dew at your sight upon the earth anew, and the morning will surround you with the dawning light of life's delight. This is true, my love, that the touch of your warm breath intoxicates your every being of life into and out of my spirit as well. This is true, my love, that the world will yet know your melodious songs. Go forth, my dear twice-born one, to walk the earth once more and help to bring evil to its knees.
"What the heck," said Rascal. "I too now believe in magic. Ah, the strange, enchanting things that never happen around here that cannot ever be told."
In Tahiti, the universe shrunk to a point, with Questor and Top Secret having now become a love-made singularity within it that ever made it the cosmos, starring in its entirety. With love came strength, that which could evermore bring the well-nigh impossible into its startling being. Rascal had given them another month. Evil had been slow and struggling lately, lying low. The regular army took care of the war zones. Their thoughts turned to the event of the fallen agent in Egypt. And so they had asked for a third glass, placing it upside down on the table, making a toast to the valiant one, Frederick.
Worthless and priceless. All the world's wealth cannot extend the power. A rebirth of sorts. I turn the cup. Wine drops to thirsty lips descend.
While they looked off into inner space and considered their own mortality for a moment, an encrypted text message came from Rascal. Well, they nearly fell out their chairs as night turned to day within them.
Then a few drops she poured onto the ground. That precious drink of these quatrains profound. You're the elixir that fills my cup, the scent on the breezes that lifts me up.
A special aroma seemed to arise from the glass as they drank it, the Persia fumes of another ancient one who now walked the skies with an houri at his side. Through the Rubaiyat I sense enchantment, essence distilled by the translator's scent.
To Frederick this cup flows, and through the grapes his life flows. The rumor is true. Says, you being who we are, Ostino, let's go and get our man. Leave no one behind.
Egypt. The waves were rough in the Egyptian harbor as Questor and Top Secret landed unobserved, noting the site of the once great Library of Alexandria that had met several burnings and other disasters, setting the world back at least 1,000 years. The first known library of its kind to gather a serious collection of books from beyond its country's borders, the library at Alexandria was charged with collecting all the world's knowledge. It did so through an aggressive and well-funded royal mandate involving trips to the book fairs of Rhodes and Athens, and a potentially apocryphal or exaggerated policy of pulling the books off every ship that came into port, keeping the originals and returning copies to their owners. This detail is informed by the fact that Alexandria, because of its man-made bidirectional port between the mainland and the Pharos Island, welcomed trade from the east and west, and soon found itself the international hub for trade, as well as the leading producer of papyrus and, soon enough, books. Section 4, an NIA group of international-looking assassins, had been quickly dispatched to Alexandria. Rascal followed, for Frederick had uncovered a plot to render the Suez Canal inoperative, plus some other actions unknown. As good luck would have it for them, the conspirators were now meeting in a hotel to finalize their plans. Frederick placed a call to his foes there, saying that he had just returned from the dead, describing them all and the activities that had led up to his demise, and that he was outside now and standing across the street for their verification. The word spread quickly, and so they pulled open the drapes, startled to see that it was indeed Frederick come back to life. Whilst they stood astonished, murmuring that he had had no pulse, Frederick quickly moved behind Pompey's pillar, the only ancient structure that had remained standing in Alexandria. Word of the conspirators' meeting room number was quickly sent to the other half of Section 4 that was already in the hotel. Some terrorists even stepped out onto the balcony. The conspirators' eyes went right to Frederick, now partly behind the pillar and sticking out, and waving his fedora, saying, "From heaven's heart, I step on you." A curse meaning more than it sounded to, for in this part of the world, the bottom of a shoe was a bad thing. Ancient history took a slight beating of pockmarks just before the Section 4 assassins opened fire. Their other half doing the same from within the hotel, attempting to secure the plans of the plots within. A freak ricochet caught Commander Rascal in the chest as he stood shielded in a doorway, no apparent harm being done by its impact. However, it somehow triggered a cascade leading to heart failure for the grand and aging man, and he soon fell to the ground, his color draining rapidly. Precious moments passed before Frederick could get over there. Quester and Top Secret, having been given positions as backups, provided a burst of cover fire. Finally, there was the silence in the hotel that indicated death or great injury to all the conspirators. And so the agents gathered around Frederick and the great and legendary 7-star Grandmaster. He was fading fast, everyone's eyes growing dim and downcast at his prospects.
Try this.
As he pulled out an ancient-looking vial, the rascal inhaled the air obtained from the pyramid, and a fine color blush soon replaced the pale that he had nearly gone beyond.
Ah, it was just a scratch. None of this ever happened.
There was a ship in the harbor waiting, but it was now much too dangerous to use it, the local police all unaccountably having gathered there for the mere overturning of a donut truck. The operatives thus scattered and regrouped on a deserted desert road whilst the police ate their donut desserts at the seashore, and all the terrorist conspirators lay dead as their own just desserts. The black rescue jet had just landed and awaited, a necessary risk. Later, in flight, Frederick revealed another precious find, an ancient book that had survived the Alexandria Library, its title being of the nature of The Quickness of Being and the Dead, where quick was what was anciently used to mean alive. But in another definition, it was a pun of the Arabic language, such as in the quick and the dead.
We did very little, for she planned it all.
Rascal went for a heart checkup, the doctor being amazed at the man's glorious state of health. Quester and Top Secret had settled in French Polynesia, now calling it home, although their work was still with the ninjas when necessary. They lived simple, not needing much. If the planet ever came to a disaster, they were ready, even having their own island now.
Imagine a world where we can manipulate the fundamental particles of the universe. A world where we can probe the deepest mysteries of the cosmos. Welcome to the world of particle physics, a realm where the impossible becomes possible, where the unseen becomes seen. In the heartland of America, nestled just outside Chicago, Illinois, lies the town of Batavia. It's a place known for its wild corn, geese, and buffalo. But Batavia is also home to something far more extraordinary, the famous collider known as the Tevatron at Fermilab. The Tevatron is a marvel of human ingenuity, a machine that produces 1,000 GeV, a whole TV of energetic beams of protons and antiprotons. These beams smash together at 2 collision points, creating an explosion of energy and particles. One point tracks the effects of these collisions, while another measures the energy produced. In 1995, a remarkable discovery was made at the Tevatron. The heavyweight top quark, a particle not seen in the universe since the Big Bang, made its fleeting appearance. Although it didn't last long, decaying into a bottom quark and a W-charged gauge boson, it was enough to leave its signature behind. Finding this elusive top quark was no easy task. Scientists would have had to sift through 10 trillion collision events to find it. But thanks to the work of Lisa Randall, who developed a more precise way to interpret experimental results about weak reactions, this daunting task was reduced to a mere 100,000 reports. The world of particle physics is a frontier of human knowledge, a place where we push the boundaries of what we know about the universe. It's a world that is as exciting as it is mysterious, as intriguing as it is challenging. So, next time you think about the universe, remember the Tevatron and the top quark. Remember that we are capable of extraordinary things when we dare to explore the unknown. So, let us continue to probe the mysteries of the cosmos, to push the boundaries of our knowledge. Because who knows what we might discover next? Perhaps the key to understanding the universe lies hidden in the heart of a particle. Perhaps it lies waiting for us in the vast, unexplored wilderness of particle physics. Only time will tell.
One day, Rascal himself paid Questor and Top Secret a visit, several weeks after the Egyptian escapade, as it had become known, entering their Eden of Paradisea to see it for himself. Not bad, encouraged Rascal. Great, actually. Perhaps I shall obtain one of these retreats someday, maybe even soon, for a catastrophic disaster looms in Switzerland. They did not need to ask about that which he was about to tell them when he was ready to. Good to see that you still walk the earth, Rascal. Thanks for your service to me in Alexandria. Our pleasure. I was nearly a goner. Frederick gave his only vial to you, sir, rather than saving it for himself should he die again. Duly noted. And now Frederick is a 3-star NIA general in charge of the new forming Middle East quagmire, although he may not really consider that a promotion, haha. I really needed to delegate some work too. And the Queen of Nubia? Well, she helped us, so we must respect her privacy. The world would build a road to her door if they knew she could reverse death itself. Agreed. However, it only works on the nearly or the newly dead, not on the really, really dead. I thought so. Yes, so Elvis has truly left the building. Good one, Sir General, plus Napoleon will never reign again. Thankfully. But there will be new and wishful dictators. True. Now, Questor, you grew up in Illinois? Just outside of Chicago. Ever been to the town of Batavia? Yes, in 1972. I took a ride on my motorcycle to see the famous prairies, and then continued on to see the newly built collider called the Tevatron at Fermilab. And what did you see? I saw wild corn, geese, and even buffalo roaming at the site. Yes, it is a flatland wilderness of much wildlife. The perfect view of its outlying areas serves as a fine protection from any nefarious planers. True, and it produces 1000 GeV, a whole TV of energetic beams of protons and antiprotons that smash together at 2 collision points, one that tracks the effects and one that measures the energy. And in 1995, they found the heavyweight top quark, probably its first appearance in the universe since the Big Bang, although it didn't last very long. It decayed into a bottom quark and a W-charged gauge boson that communicates the weak force, which then of course soon decayed into leptons or quarks, but all that was its signature. Yes, and it was formerly hard to find. They would have had to sift through 10 trillion collision events to find it, but for Lisa Randall, who developed a more precise way to interpret the experimental results about weak reactions. Then they only had to sift through 100,000 reports or so. I have a feeling that we will be talking to her.
You may. Now she is at the Conseil Européen pour la Recherche Nucléaire, as it was first called. CERN. Now they call it Organisation Européenne pour la Recherche Nucléaire. URN. No, they still call it CERN, although they might have called it CORN. The World Wide Web was invented there too. Perhaps Al Gore worked there. Ha, not exactly. Anyway, Lisa has noted a new anomaly coming from somewhere outside CERN. They solved 2 of these anomalies previously on their own back at LEP, the Large Electron-Positron Collider that churns out Z bosons like a cheesecake factory. Instead of taking Z's, they needed to know the energy at which positrons and electrons collided so that they could measure the boson, so they could then go on to validate much of the standard model. Yes, they had to determine the precise value of the Z boson's mass. However, the energy seemed to rise and fall slightly when they measured it at particular times. Weather? Rainfall? Close, it turned out to be the effects of the tides in Lake Geneva. This in turn altered the nearby terrain, which slightly altered the distance over which the electrons and positrons traveled inside the collider. Indeed, they have incredible precision. The second case was a slight misalignment of the electrons and positrons, indicating that the magnetic fields of the collider had some variations. When a train went by. You got it? In particular, it was the TGV, the express train that travels between Geneva and Paris. One day there was a strike, and so the trains did not run. I have a feeling we may be riding on that train soon. Yes, if you accept the mission. Lisa is now at the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, isn't she? Where the precision is astronomical? Yes, it has 7 times more energy than the TV, and it's due to totally restart in October. But they did run some tests on it already. Lisa detected an inexplicable anomaly before it broke down for some other reason. Some kind of machine in the area, not just automobiles? Yes, a larger machine than a truck is suspected. CERN sits in a vast mountainous region, the opposite of the plains surrounding Fermilab in Batavia. We found a reference to a terror plot at LHC in the materials that we secured near Alexandria. It wasn't as obvious as it sounds. We had to break codes. Fooling with the LHC could destroy most of Europe. Indeed, and so we have to investigate. I have some satellite imagery indicating some metals in the area, some of them just deposits, of course. We'll go, said Top Secret. I am sending you both to Chamonix, a remarkable valley that runs between mountains covered with glaciers that used to descend almost to the roads, but that was before global warming arrived. You will be at the foot of Mount Blanc, the highest mountain in Europe. Other agents will check other areas, even the CIA, for this is a joint mission. However, trust no one. Your area is the one we suspect.
So we just walk right in? Pretty much, for CERN's main entrance is but a few feet away from the French border. They hardly ever bother with the scientists who cross it twice daily. Great security, huh? So, we need to keep this quiet, lest the terrorists get alarmed and move their machinery? Yes, as per usual. We would only flood the region if nothing else works. But this could cause them to accelerate their plan, which might still work to some disastrous degree. We'll get ready tonight. You and Top Secret will pose as married scientists who also like to get out and ski the Jura mountain slopes, as do many of the tan scientists there, as well as snowboarding and hiking. We are already tan and have learned how to survive in the wild. Plus, we are married and speak French, replied Top Secret. Huh? Oh, you're married. Well, the secret is out. Anyway, exactly. And so as such you two shall wander around much further and farther to investigate the concerns. As you are both from ToeQuest, you can talk the talk of science when need be. Lisa will be in touch with you, such as and especially if and when the anomaly returns, as this may be when our adversaries are testing their equipment. This is a big one, so I have informed the president. And the terrorists will look like what? They will look like regular people, not like the Taliban or anything like that. They may be posing as fake scientists as well, some of them actually having that knowledge, many just dumb lookouts perhaps. We're ready already actually, we traveled light. The sooner you acclimate yourselves to Switzerland, the better. And people thought that black holes produced by the LHC would destroy the world. Wrong as we know, but the ethics of some people have fallen into a bottomless pit, never to be retrieved. You're a good man, Rascal, to protect the light of day. I try.
Faustino and Passiona enjoyed Paris, and then the scenic train ride, while wondering where their quarry might be hidden among the rocks. Passiona began, since the LHC is quiet now, the Terra machinery may be as well, but for some more integration testing in both. The terrorists are not ready. No, they aren't, for they had their chance last year when the LHC went online for a while. And then the LHC failed for lack of a 10-cent part. But for that, this might have all been a wasteland already, but I still feel that our enemy must have much work yet to do. So, the terrorists wouldn't just set up shop in a house or a building, would they? No, for the emanations would be noticed or disrupt someone's cable TV service. Plus there are business inspections, tax appraisals and such. So they may be up in the mountains, which is a really vast area, but they would still need an electric source, either from generators or from a power line. How would they be getting these machine parts to this remote location? That is the question. Piecemeal somehow, plus they need food.
Faustino and Passiona got off the train. Lisa Randall was waiting for them at the station and drove them across the border and into CERN with no fuss whatsoever. The anomaly is a definite problem, stated Lisa. It has an unnatural source, as we are quite familiar with the natural ones, and it was observed twice, so it was not a fluke. We'll look around, answered Passiona. We'll find it if it's in our area, which is, of course, quite extensive, but we are not alone in this endeavor. Lisa perked up. I can narrow that down. They would need a direct line of sight to the LHC. Faustino looked out the panoramic window. entire mountain ranges came into view. So whatever we can see from here is where they might be. Passiona gleamed, but the closer the better for what they have to build within their constraints. I'd say so, Lisa confirmed. Well, Ostino said, we're off to find the needle that could burst the bubble of the Ring of Hadrons. Good luck, answered Lisa, for there is a large sub-function test coming up within a month. Ostino, Questa, and Passiona, top secret, soon got into the swing of environs of Mount Blanc and its events, improving their skiing talents, and then hiking some trails at random, some at mid-mountain and some towards the base, although not really expecting to chance upon something so luckily and immediately. They ticked off a vein of iron ore as being no longer suspected and tracked along some power lines, but the spurs were endless and very hard to follow. As expected, nothing of interest appeared for the first 2 weeks. In between excursions, the tropical couple feasted at the restaurant on top of the mountain, speaking in both French and English with the patrons. Now and then they recognized a DIA, NIA or CIA operative, but said nothing, for they didn't exist. If anyone was watching them, they would have not noted anything unusual in their demeanor or in their conversations, only that they were serious scientists, sometimes overhearing statements like this. When the universe was born, it was smaller than an electron, which is a quantum object that can exist simultaneously in many states. So the universe must also be a quantum object and exist in many states. Or, for a universe to generate itself, it would have to exist before it existed. Even I wonder what life an electron would have. A very electrifying life charged with zing. There were many trails to check out, both regular and expert, which they could now accomplish. So, just for adventure and of some insight, each time they had a choice, they took the more difficult path. While enjoying the dip of a bowl, as skiers called it, they spotted a trail off to the right that had a closed sign on it. While this was not unusual, they quickly turned their skis sideways, the edges digging in and slowing them to a stop, within a spray of snowy ice crystals flying and glittering in the sunlight.
What if the very fabric of our universe was not as we know it? What if it bore an anomaly that defied our understanding of physics? It's a question that haunted Ostino and Passiona as they disembarked from their train, their eyes meeting the gaze of Lisa Randall, who stood ready to escort them into the heart of CERN. An anomaly, certainly a problem, Lisa professed, her voice echoing their shared concerns. It's unnatural and it's appeared twice. It's no fluke. She drove them across the border into the very belly of the beast, a realm where the laws of physics danced and swirled in ways that might have seemed fantastical to the uninitiated. We'll find it, Passiona declared, her voice filled with determination. We have a vast area to cover, but we're not alone in this. Lisa, ever the optimist, chimed in. They would need a direct line of sight to the LHC. Ostino, peering out of the panoramic window, took in the breathtaking view of the mountain ranges. So, anything within our sight from here could be the source. Passiona's eyes sparkled with excitement. And the closer the better. Lisa nodded. I'd say so. Ostino chimed in with a bit of humor. Well, we're off to find the needle that could burst the bubble of the Ring of Hadrons. Lisa wished them luck, a hint of worry in her voice. There's a large sub-function test coming up within a month. Ostino and Passiona threw themselves into the rhythm of life around Mount Blanc, improving their skiing skills, hiking random trails, all the while scanning their surroundings for anything out of the ordinary. They brushed off the occasional DIA, NIA, or CIA operative, keeping their conversations strictly scientific and often philosophical. When the universe was born, it was smaller than an electron, they'd say. So the universe must also be a quantum object and exist in many states. Or they'd ponder, for a universe to generate itself, it would have to exist before it existed. Their discussions would even take whimsical turns. I wonder what life an electron would have, to which the reply would be, a very electrifying life charged with zing. The pair ventured down many trails, choosing the more difficult path each time, seeking not just adventure, but insight. Then, one day, they spotted a trail with a closed sign. Not unusual, but something made them stop. their skis spraying a shower of ice crystals into the air. They exchanged glances. Was this the anomaly they'd been searching for? Or was it just another dead end? The truth, it seems, will have to wait until next time.
Passiona noted after some time. He didn't even remind us that this section was closed. He seemed to be quite an odd fellow. Indeed, even odder than it is to be English. Yes, overdoing those chaps and more that you already know. There is something else nagging at the back of my mind. The smoking? Yes, but I suppose anyone might do that. Something more. The way he smoked? Yes, it looked awkward. I've got it. When we first saw him, he lit and held the cigarette differently, as in the German-Russian style, and then when we approached, he switched it to the Western style. Good eye. He is not an Englishman, but a white Russian, as Rascal once told me about when his team raided a Soviet charm school in his younger days. They were training spies in the ways of Americana. So, why is he here now but not earlier? Perhaps there is a delivery coming. They sat for an uneventful while of over 3 hours. No one entered the closed area, although a few paused at a picnic table near to it, and then skied on. Then there was no one. What do you think? We'll check it again tomorrow. Some of the ski packs looked bulkier today. Yes, but the non-Englishman probably waved them on and away, because we landed on his doorstep. Yes, but we could be making a lot of ado out of nothing. Maybe he is on our side, so to speak, the new KGB or something. Could be, but let's send out a readiness alert, just in case. The deliveries will probably try to happen again tomorrow, if indeed that's what they are. The loving couple slept and loved the night away as if there were no tomorrow. The happenings are confidential. The next day, they took up a spot with a better view and raised their binoculars. A different man was there, sitting in a folding chair. It says Ski Patrol on his jacket. Yet the jacket is not quite his size. He must have found it somewhere. Do they think we are stupid or something? What an insult to the NIA. I might have to report this post. 2 hours later, a skier with a bulky pack swooshed into the closed area and onto the animal trail about 50 feet downslope from the folding chairman. They put someone else on duty, but neglected to alter the motif. Yes, and they could have just as well had no one looking out, and so then we would have been none the wiser. True, someone is becoming paranoid. By posting a lookout, they have only managed to give away their position. Yet the overall plan is ingenious. Easy access in and out, the cover of the public ski area, the closed area, a power line spur connection wired perhaps. I can see CERN in the distance. Would you care to ski in the moonlight on the brightly lit snow? Yes, tonight. Call back up and raise the alert for Section 7 to have their motors running. And I'll call Rascal. All because of a litterbug. Luck happens. We would have found it eventually. Before or after Armageddon.
Midnight arrived and passed. The apparently undisciplined terrorists would be drunk or asleep by now, except for some watchmen grown bored by nothing much ever happening but a moose wandering by. Ostino and Passiona wore white, the better to blend in with the snow lit by the nearly full moon. They skied soft but sure, entering the closed area and then the side trail, their backup slightly behind them by a few minutes. It was much darker in there, in places due to the tall fir trees, so they flipped down their night goggles. The trail was long and winding, indeed coming within a few feet of the edge, another fine deterrent to those who might wander this way unawares. They had skied perhaps 3 miles. The path was rough and tortuous. It was nearly 1 a.m. I really hope there's something in here. There is. These tracks ahead of us are fresh, plus some were made by a snowmobile, one way of getting back up and out. They stopped and looked. What's that ahead? It's not ahead, it's a power station. The brickwork looks new. The guard is asleep outside. They've run a cable along the ground to that electric tower way over yonder. Jump over it if we end up going out that way in a while. Yes, for we don't have a snowmobile. There is always a back way out for an emergency escape. Go downhill if there is a choice. Let's make the call now and then take that guard out. Yes, and if anything happens to us, Section 7 won't get our next call and will then come in anyway. If we're fine, we'll bring them in all the sooner. Passiona loaded a dart. It hit the guard in the neck, he toppling over ever so gently. Then his whiskey bottle fell onto a rock and shattered. Some men soon began pouring out of the power station, stumbling a bit, some with guns. Our dear couple made the confirmation call and were already heading down a sloping trail. this being the terrorists' back door and way out. They stopped after a bit, not wishing to become targets by their movement through an open bowl just beyond and below. They may not shoot, as this could give their position away, as they may not know that we already know. Yes, if they're smart, although these pot-shot sounds might not be so loud once they are heard way down in the valley. But they must now suspect some listeners about. However, some shots rang out, a few landing nearby. They're not smart. Yes, but the shots are random. They don't know where we are. We can't stay here forever. I hear a snowmobile engine starting up. We have auto GPS. Section 7 can tell friend from foe. Where are they? Hark! I hear the whispering rotors. Stay down.
Choppers were coming up the slope, the cannons blasting the area about the power station. Troop ships followed, Section 7 rappelling down to the ground a short distance away from the power station. A snowmobile exploded but 200 feet away from Ostino and Passiona. Way off in the distance, they could see skiers wearing rifles passing by at the point where the traveled trail had met the cliffs. I believe I saw Rascal in that first chopper. The guy loves to be close to the action. And so do we to each other. Kiss me. The US president called his counterpart in Switzerland, waking him up. After a brief conversation, it became clear to both sides that there was no need to look into the incident any further, for indeed, it never happened. A week later, the LHC subfunction test began. There was no anomaly. Lisa smiled to herself. Precision had won the day. In a few months, they could begin the search for the Higgs particle. The discussion of the LHC mission accomplished was held in the ultra-secure general's bunker. "You're on stage, guys," Rascal encouraged Ostino. "I was surprised to see you in the lead chopper, General. We don't need for you to die again so soon." Well, our lead pilot had the flu, and I had a lot of training as a warrant officer years ago and thought I'd fill in. The downdrafts of the mountains are always a problem, as well as the thin air that strains the rotors. My leaden foot was needed. Your approach was excellent, Rascal, as was the cannon fire upon the station and the destruction of the oncoming snowmobile. You even purposely sent a mini blizzard into the eyes of the other terrorists streaming out. Thanks, but we all worked together. Your skiing backups laid down some impressive fire, so my chopper was not in any immediate danger. Then the full ski force came in to seal that exit and the fates of many evildoers. And of course, there was your astute identification of the location of the terrorists and their hideout.
Passiona asked of Rascal, had the terrorists succeeded, would a large region have been radiated beyond repair? Yes, but it would much worse that you are suggesting. All of Europe? No, larger. My God, what? There are some things that I should never tell. But by saying so, you did. Yes, indeed, for you all should know. Rascal asked them to lean in, to hear a whisper, more so for the drama than anything else, and to forever remember it. They approached the grand old man, being almost eye to eye. Rascal stating softly, "Nothing less than the entire planet would have been rendered uninhabitable forever." No one spoke for a while. "Perhaps the Mayan calendar was off a few years," Rascal added. "Did the LHC really fail on its own because of some magnet? No, we shut it down as a precaution. Suppose that the terrorists' attack had begun. Lisa was going to turn the LHC beams toward the incoming signals if necessary to avert a total disaster. It would have saved the day but would have blasted a large portion of Mount Blanc away. Wow, it will be hard to beat this story, at least for the scope of its possible bad ending. I have other stories that are not so vast in an ugly conclusion but have even more varied and interesting aspects. From your early days and from your later days of field command. Indeed, and soon we shall sit down, pour some wine, light a few cigars and play some exciting music at a low volume while I tell you all about them. I was called Rascal back then. Such is the full story of the charm school and the attempted replacement of the Soviet leader. Yes, for those are intertwined and more, such as other Iranian mishaps and a stolen nuclear submarine. Come prepared to relax and listen for quite a while. I've been dying to tell someone. It will be like hearing a book that has never been written, for it never happened. Yes, consider it fiction.
The NIA operatives had been listening to some of Rascal's rapt descriptions of the prelude to his major adventures that led him to become their commander and Grand Master. They had reconvened in Niihau, Hawaii, his home office that he'd often left so as to be still active in the field, the place where he was meant to be, the place where he was destined to operate from, that much high tech now allowed. They could hardly believe their eyes when they saw the place. No one was in a rush to hear all, for they ever listened and savoured the details as they slowly but grandly came forth via this nearly lost art of storytelling. They were not impatient and could wait, but they could feel that some things writ very large were coming. The stuff behind the scenes that never happened, being just beyond the horizon of the recent and ever-building stories by this lone grandmaster of the ninja empire that protected the world's innocence as best they could with their deep determination and ever-present goodness. Rascal was unveiling tales, narratives, anecdotes, reports, accounts, and sagas. The old rascal lit up a cigar as the stories unfolded in the haze of a pipe dream. "Do tell what else was in that Great Pyramid, Frederick," Rascal suggested. "There were 4,000-year-old iron weapons that did not rust, looking as new as the day they were forged. I held glass that bent without breaking. I drank from a vase that poured water without end. I filled an entire tub from it and bathed away all my dirt and dust. A compass needle went around and never stopped. I ate a cake, but I still had it. I saw the starry skies through solid rock walls. I entered a room that had no door. There was light within the room, but no flame or openings. I looked into a grain of sand and saw eternity." Frederick paused, recalling. "Outside, I saw the Sphinx. Its glance was fixed on something else. It was the glance of a being who thinks in centuries and millenniums. I did not exist and could not exist for it was the face of eternity."
No one spoke. Next, after an hour break during which you might go out to see the scenery, we will hear some about a long trek from an escape from a Soviet prison through the mountains and across some ink-black rivers. Come back, friends, to hear of the dark, the light, and the never. We are here, being ever. There are books unwritten and never told. We can listen until we get old. By what muted shore of the dark river did its strand call me forth? We're sure that we'll never hear worse. By what far edge of furrowed forest didst the motherland seek my name? O rascal, through what hazy depth of gloom hast thou tread and threadest? Gather thee round and you shall knowest. We haven't seen old Grandmaster West for 3 years now. We presume that he is enjoying his retirement, but then I read an amazing newspaper headline for which my intelligence has no answer. But the guy is 103 years old. He was your Grandmaster? Yes. He always watched over me in my career in field command. Somehow he gave me some kind of magic. Or was I just one lucky son of a gun? One's outlook can make luck. Yes, some it can. I needed it all in the nuclear crises. Iran? Yes, always Iran, isn't it? They must be some kind of turning point of history. Yes, they are. Our TOE analysis had found that focus point. Who went on that mission? Old West himself, after he promoted me to replace him. He killed the turning point of history that would have done in the world eventually, and then retired for good. The butterflies stood upon the edge of forever fading, yes, and now we are on another better path. I'm in Colombia in South America. Wish you were here, Angel. Seems all the big drug lords are in one place and having a meeting. We may have to crash the party. Hello all, said Pasiona. Our operative Ostino has just contacted us and is planning on crashing the party of certain said drug lords in Colombia. Be on the tarmac at 500 hours, be dressed for jungle warfare. High risk pay for all, of course. See you there, you all know where to go now, right? Okay everyone, the word from Rascal is that we will be having some fun ridding the world of some drug scumlords. That's all, people. Until 0500, everyone have fun. Say goodbye to your families. It may be a long one. Rascal implored, try not to harm the women and children. Also, we will blow up the coke factory and its warehouse nearby on the estate. It will then be snowing as like in a winter blizzard. Try not to be in it or inhale it or let it land on your tongue. Wait until all the people have run out to see the destruction as they will be wont to do, as if that does anything, and let them stand around out there a while thinking that nothing else is going to happen. Until all are present, then. Pasiona was running back to the main floor of her hideaway, shouting out to her darlings as they stood outside the windows trying not to look inconspicuous, and at the same time carry on a conversation with their mother. They were terribly upset that after just a few short days of their leafless mother being back, she had to once again take off and disappear into the sunset. Pasiona was getting perturbed after all. Her darlings were not little babies anymore, however she did understand. Life of an agent is always risky, and they all knew that. Pasiona shouted out her love to her babies, all grown up, and scurried down the stairs to the secret exit entrance to her home away from home. As she buckled herself into the top secret vehicle, one that could fly through both sea and air, and could also navigate rough mountain terrain, as well as pass any race car on the streets, There was a thought that was niggling at the back of her brain, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. That more than anything else bothered her, it was things like that that could down an agent in the blink of an eye. Passiona shook it off. Can't let it get to me, she thought, as she raced to the rendezvous point where they would all join as one on this operation. Everyone was excited. The air was quite literally electric with excitement and tension. Rascal walked into the front of the vessel that was going to take them all to the drug-infested Coke Lord's estate, where, unbeknownst to the locals, yeah right, there was a full-fledged underground factory working 24/7, 365 days a year. They produced everything that their banditized brains could conjure, which of course everyone was one buttload of illegal and illicit drugs. Rascal cleared his throat rather loudly. Here we are, comrades, let's load up the ship with weapons and our arses as well.
Rascal laughed and apologized to his friends and employees. They all boarded the vessel, oohing and awing at the wonders of modern technology that was displayed everywhere the eye rested as it roamed about. Everyone got comfy and strapped in, preparation for the G-forces that were about to slam them into their seats. Passiona finally couldn't stand it any longer, and said after some extra loud throat clearing, "Hey everyone, I need your input on some matters pertaining to our mission. Could everyone give me a rundown on what your expected part of the mission is? Just so we're all on the same page here. I also need you all to do a voice record on the panel here beside me for our security entrance program. Without you saying your name into the speaker at the rear door, there will be no staying inside this ship. That will be all. Okay now everyone, when you are ready, please come up to the front and give me your mission blueprints." There was a resonance of straps being latched and safety harnesses being snapped into place. Soon they had arrived over their destination, and under the cover of night they were going to do a jump. 1-2 jump, 1-2 jump, and so on until only Rascal was left. Rascal told the pilot, "Veer left and go down to the coast. We will pick up the special ops agents there." Bang, they were hit, but thanks to the regenerative properties of the special alloy synthetic material derived from the common spider, the repair was quickly and efficiently taken care of. Passiona was down under cover of the vegetation. She and her team were wearing state-of-the-art suits that changed with their surroundings, exactly like that of the chameleon. They had on headgear that had night vision /X-ray/zoom and PC compatible with their thoughts, so when one component was needed, it automatically was in use. They advanced stealthily toward the front of the estate. They had to access the rear entrance to the warehouse to deploy their pins, which when the signal was given would level everything in sight with a sonic pulse. Ostina was now at Passiona's side. They shared an affectionate kiss, and they both saw it at once. Stop. Here was a web of some sort blocking their path. They were almost in. Ostino pulled out his unit, and with several deft movements, the web was gone. They dove in and rolled, and slithered out of the direct path of an enemy patrol. They lay motionless. Passiona was sweating, but grinning like a Cheshire cat. This was it. The NIA teams gradually got into position, noting the comings and goings of the enemy patrols, leaving them alone. For now, they being relatively few in number, so they could continue to report to the Lord of Drug Lords, Don Mario, that all was well. Mario had left more than 3,000 deaths in the wake of his push to control the cocaine trade that found its way across the Caribbean Sea. NIA settled in close. It was as if hundreds of monks had walked barefoot, not even breaking a twig or stirring a bird. Rascal laughed and apologized to his friends and employees. They all boarded the vessel, oohing and awing at the wonders of modern technology that was displayed everywhere the eye rested as it roamed about. Everyone got comfy and strapped in, preparation for the G-forces that were about to slam them into their seats. Passiona finally couldn't stand it any longer, and said after some extra loud throat clearing, "Hey everyone, I need your input on some matters pertaining to our mission. Could everyone give me a rundown on what your expected part of the mission is? Just so we're all on the same page here. I also need you all to do a voice record on the panel here beside me for our security entrance program. Without you saying your name into the speaker at the rear door, there will be no staying inside this ship. That will be all. Okay now everyone, when you are ready, please come up to the front and give me your mission blueprints." There was a resonance of straps being latched and safety harnesses being snapped into place. Soon they had arrived over their destination, and under the cover of night they were going to do a jump. 1-2 jump, 1-2 jump, and so on until only Rascal was left. Rascal told the pilot, "Veer left and go down to the coast. We will pick up the special ops agents there." Bang, they were hit, but thanks to the regenerative properties of the special alloy synthetic material derived from the common spider, the repair was quickly and efficiently taken care of. Passiona was down under cover of the vegetation. She and her team were wearing state-of-the-art suits that changed with their surroundings, exactly like that of the chameleon. They had on headgear that had night vision / X-ray / zoom and PC compatible with their thoughts, so when one component was needed, it automatically was in use. They advanced stealthily toward the front of the estate. They had to access the rear entrance to the warehouse to deploy their pins, which when the signal was given would level everything in sight with a sonic pulse. Ostina was now at Passiona's side. They shared an affectionate kiss, and they both saw it at once. Stop. Here was a web of some sort blocking their path. They were almost in. Ostino pulled out his unit, and with several deft movements, the web was gone. They dove in and rolled, and slithered out of the direct path of an enemy patrol. They lay motionless. Passiona was sweating, but grinning like a Cheshire cat. This was it. The NIA teams gradually got into position, noting the comings and goings of the enemy patrols, leaving them alone. For now, they being relatively few in number, so they could continue to report to the Lord of Drug Lords, Don Mario, that all was well. Mario had left more than 3,000 deaths in the wake of his push to control the cocaine trade that found its way across the Caribbean Sea. NIA settled in close. It was as if hundreds of monks had walked barefoot, not even breaking a twig or stirring a bird.
They all headed to the vessel that awaited them in camouflage. This vessel had a state-of-the-art skin over it that not only changed to blend with its surroundings, it also was indestructible. When hit, thousands of nanobots set out to repair the hull with a combination of polymer spider silk that was almost impenetrable. They headed to one of their many bases. They were now underground and out of reach of all weapons, missiles, even nuclear. Quester was talking off to the side of the room with Rascal. Rascal began, "I was able to catch most of the action from above, then I followed some of the lights in the dark. Well, the captain gave the signal by shooting Don Mario in the knee, just as the sun sank into the sea, the drug lord actually really hobbling away and taking refuge under a tree. Then all hell broke loose. Yes, almost all were shot in some way. And then what else we'd hoped for began to happen to the rear, as enemy troops came forth out of the jungle, not really their best move. Our forces on the other side of the hill and the helicopter door gunners took care of them. We took some prisoners as samples from various locations. Then we evacuated and you sent out the fake news release. It went well, Rascal commented. After you all and I were long gone, 2 missiles lifted off from an unmanned barge out in the ocean. One missile leveled the entire estate, and the other one circled back and destroyed the barge that never was.
Colombian police captured the country's most powerful drug lord, Daniel Rendon, also known as Don Mario. Rendon is responsible for over 3,000 deaths in his quest to control the cocaine trade on the country's Caribbean coast. The capture takes place on a farm in the northwestern region of Uraba, near the Panamanian border. Rendon is found hiding and is described as cowering and hugging a palm tree. He is wearing a blue and brown t-shirt and gray sweatpants. After the operation, Rendon is flown to Bogota on a Colombian police plane. He is wanted on charges of drug trafficking, murder, and conspiracy. The Colombian authorities had offered a $2.5 million reward for his capture, which will be paid to informants. Rendon is also wanted on drug trafficking charges in the United States. On the plane, he expresses his willingness to collaborate with Colombian and U.S. authorities. The police commander hopes that Rendon's lieutenants will also turn themselves in. Rendon is believed to have controlled an army of 1,000 fighters who fought rival gangs for control of drug routes along Colombia's Caribbean coast. He had declared war against the organization led by demobilized paramilitary chief Diego Don Berna Murillo, who was extradited to the United States on drug charges last year. No additional scenes in this script.
The NIA had discovered the planning headquarters of the latest conspiracy simply by tailing some of its members. Top Secret was given the job of discovering the plans inside their computers and in a way that would provide for a continuing source of information. Someday, an airstrike could take out this entire planning building, but only after all its operatives in the field were dead. Their computer network was only internal, so there was no way to hack in. A member had to physically come to the building to learn or update his part. The director had access to the total plan, continually going over it and updating it. The building was impenetrable. Members not only had brain chip implants, but there were umpteen levels of retina scans and fingerprint identification as one progressed through the more secure levels of the building. It wasn't like Top Secret could gouge out a chip, an eyeball, and cut off a finger off a member. For not only would this arouse suspicion, but she would look mighty silly holding up an eyeball and a fingertip at the various checkpoints. Anyway, there was also the facial recognition. The computers also had several levels of unbreakable passwords, so she couldn't just ask some cleaning maid to take a look. Hypnotizing a member was out of the question as well, the built-in chip preventing it. Nor could she read the computer monitor's radio transmissions as usual from outside of the building, since they used shielding techniques called Tempest on the monitors and even on the building itself. In addition, the new flat panel screens used low voltage and didn't scan images one line at a time. She may have been able to detect the emanations from the keyboard typing, for each key emits a unique radio wave signature when pressed, but the typing consisted of mostly navigational type actions through the database, which, anyway, had been typed in many separated pieces from many planners. Plus, there was the building's emission shielding, so she really needed to see what was in the database at the director's level, not his actual typing, which, even if some few lines were important, would end up in the database anyway.
Nor could she just look in the window somehow, for not only were the backs of the computers always facing the windows, the blinds were usually drawn, and the offices of the director and his important vice presidents were on the 6th floor. So a fake window washer person hanging outside their offices every day surely would not work. Besides, they even had a privacy screen wrapping around their computers to prevent even any accidental view, even from off to the side. So what good would it do anyway to see the backside of a computer, for it reveals nothing? Now, was this a difficult assignment or what? No, it was easy, and she didn't even need any futuristic state-of-the-art $1 million magical type super surveillance system. Could she use the CIA satellite? No, for it couldn't see through a building very well, and even if it could, a computer monitor would not be horizontal to it, but vertical. Could she kidnap the director? No, for he lived in the building 24/7. Top Secret was ready. To do what? See the back of a computer? No, the front. She would get into the database whenever the director did, for his mere looking at the secret data would give it away. Telepathy? No. Any other kind of weird emissions? Nope. She checked out a $10,000 telescope from the NIA stockroom and rented a space on the 6th floor in the building across the street. She didn't even have to bribe a maid to bend a slat in the director's blinds, for they did not quite reach all the way across, plus sometimes he forgot to close them or left them partway open. His wraparound screen would even increase the brightness of the reflection on the viewer's eyes. However, a not yet invented Mack truck-sized telescope and full computer setup would be required for this kind of eyeball reading, since eyeballs are rarely still for more than a second or two, plus the eye saccades all over the place, and so the complicated deconvolution mathematical functions used by astronomical observatories to remove the blur would not be good enough from this far away. So that technology wouldn't work. It only worked on close-up photos, NIA having used it to see the room reflected that a terrorist was speaking from. Now what? Too bad the director didn't wear glasses, for then she could have focused on those and perhaps recorded and photographed the reflections and simply reversed them. However, they too would have moved around too much, with the head motions plus the glare and the lens thickness playing many tricks. Was this assignment now getting really tough? No. Easy. She was just thinking out loud, already knowing the best method and remaining patient for it. In the meanwhile, she would try a new experimental procedure first, just for fun.
As Top Secret sat diligently observing, there was a slight buzz coming towards her. Just a fly? Nope. This was of her own design, her little missionary that could go many places that she could not. She smiled and gave a short whistle. Her little pet was going to go inland on the director. As she gave the pet a little tweak on his instrument panel and gave words of encouragement, the little fly took his leave and buzzed off through the vast maze of air ventilation shafts. It would reach the director in only a few moments. This was it. The fly buzzed around the director, annoying buzzing in and out of his range of vision. Just then the director swatted at it. Mission accomplished, Top Secret focused, through the lenses of the fly's eyes. The eyes were microscopic cameras that, as the director swatted at the fly, they had been knocked off of the fly as planned. With the concrete like glue, the microscopic lenses were all over the director's head. Only 3 had made it to a decent position, enough to see the computer screen as the director himself did. The screen grew out of its fuzziness to crystal clarity. They had some of what they needed now. The brilliant solution by Top Secret had tested the feasibility of the electronic spy bug technique. However, as expected, the director went to the restroom to wash his face. The bug's getting scrubbed off, but at least she had a good view of the men's room for a while. Even worse, the director shut his window since the actual bugs of spring were flying all over and looking for lovely flowers to pollinate. But he did leave his blinds up. They did get a bit of info, but that was only the beginning, so Top Secret teleported back with her medium-sized telescope and looked some more. Her real chance would come soon. She knew that someday this place might just get vaporized if their plans were lethal enough. But, as Rascal hinted, then the remnants would just reform somewhere else unknown. At least NIA knew where this place was, and that it was drawing evil to it like a magnet. Any and all arrivals and departures were being tracked and photographed by other NIA members, who then fed the facial images into the Apple Mac computer iPhoto program, which had a facial recognition feature. Top Secret sat patiently waiting, for the director was on his way. She knew she would get it right this time. Aha, there he is, thought Top Secret. She watched as the director moved around getting his folders. He walked to his seat and sat. Now with him out of the telescope's view, Top Secret patiently waited. Not much longer, thought she. The door to the director's inner sanctum opened. In walked the director's personal office assistant, and personal aide for that matter. She walked over and spoke to the director. She gave him his morning tea. It sat steeping as she walked out. Top Secret waited patiently.
Finally, the director poured himself a steaming cup. At last. She focused in on the cup's surface. From there, she sent the signal to Rascal, and the information started to flood into the agency's databanks. How perfect. The surface of the teacup reflecting the image of the computer screen. She grinned that Cheshire Cat smile and contacted Questor. Success. Questor relayed the full report, adding to it somewhat from her personal revelations. She had first looked through the telescope for a bigger and better reflection surface, such as a wall clock, a whiteboard, a wine glass, even a silver spoon. Nearly any shiny surface worked, but curved surfaces worked best because they revealed wide swatches of the room, eliminating the need for the peeper to find a lucky and direct sweet spot wherein the reflected screen was visible. However, the director was not going to be drinking wine at work, and there was no clock on the wall. In fact, the wall behind him was empty and was even painted black. Top Secret kept looking around. Nothing. This was supposed to be easy. It would be. Patience, she thought. Several minutes passed like slowly dying worms crawling in molasses in Death Valley. A personal assistant entered the director's office, pouring a cup of tea for him and then placing the teapot back down, where it would likely stay or be replaced to after refills. Top Secret focused on the shiny silver teapot or the teacup, whichever was more useful at the time. Yes, there was his computer screen reflected in it. Top Secret's camera rolled the video and the photos clicked away as well. NIA would reverse and straighten the images. People had to drink. A coffee mug would have worked too, as it did when the director worked late. The plans of evil came rolling in, those tempests in a teapot day by day, via the simple use of a human eye defeating all the conspiracy's high-tech countermeasures. Thousands of years come and gone, they say, ni hao ever yet a forbidden paradise today. Old Rascal, at the edge of forever, sat upon his porch of the temple of the Forbidden City on the Forbidden Isle of Nihao at midnight, looking up into the starry sky, and then thought, what inky void of space shall we now have to cross? Answers. Science discovers the truth everywhere. Religion just makes for bigger questions. Philosophers just sit around in chairs. Evolution explains how we got somewheres.
I'm the darkest, said the shadow to the night. No, said midnight, compared to me you're bright. You floodlights, said starless space, stop your fight. The darkest plight is the lack of love's delight. The operatives were again meeting on Nihao, the first evening drawing to a close. The rascal softly spoke. I don't know why I'm still here. What turned out to be my last mission as an operative seemed as to be one that should have taken me to the grave. The three fates had met, Morta choosing the means of my death, Nona, the life-threader, sowing no more, and Decima measuring the length of my life's beginning to the end. I'll tell it tomorrow. They all seemed like they didn't want to leave, but began to get up. Sorry, said Rascal, I hate to leave you all hanging about my Soviet prison escapade, but you see that I am indeed alive. And so you know that the best is yet to come. You can sleep well tonight." They all then heard the deep rumblings of a very large jet landing above the bunker. Rascal smiled. "All this time, I never even dared to hope. No one had authorization to land tonight," piped down the air controller. "Plus, no one even knows about this place, but our defenses are not firing." "He has his own auto-authorization," Rascal answered. "Nevertheless, we will not unlock the bunker just yet. If he can enter, then he is a friend. Nor do I yet hear or sense any roar of warning from Bronto above." Out on the airstrip, Bronto let out a cry of joy as a figure deplaned. "Ah," added Rascal, "now I sense a joy up above. A lantern of light has indeed arrived." "Who? A ghost returns?" someone asked. "He is not one who walked the earth searching for a good deed, but is a good deed unto himself. For he ferreted out the worst of the bad deeds." They all waited in suspense. There were the clicks of the bunker door unlocking, and then the rustle of someone walking through the dark tunnel, and the tapping of a cane. A voice came out of the darkness. "Rascal, old friend, how might you be?" "Now," said Rascal aloud, "who could it be who only ever called me Rascal? My own code name. Welcome, Grandmaster West." Even before the former #1 West entered the light, they could sense the emanations from his glowing being, the goodness, the courage, and the depth of the care within. Grandmaster West entered, looking very fit, but for a slight limp, like someone only around the age of 70 or so. He gave Rascal a hug, then Trish, #1 East. "Master," said Rascal, "these are our higher-ranking members." "Ah, Rascal, you're the master here now, not me. You all look to be among the finest protectors and butterflies of forever that we have ever known. I have read of your exploits." He then shook hands with all of the operatives and met their gaze, some with tears in their eyes, for they had known or heard of him, but had thought him dead and gone. "How is it, Master," asked Dragon Master General Rascal, "that you even resist time itself, looking younger than ever?"
Once upon a time, in a land far away, there lived a warrior, strong and brave. With a heart of gold and a spirit untamed, he fought for justice, never seeking fame. Battles and trials, he stood the weak, protecting them, gleamed bright, his armor shone, beacon of hope when darkness was known. With every strike he fought with might, by honor, his purpose in sight. His fears, never backing down, he knew that courage would wear the crown. The of danger he never wavered, determination never faltered or caved. Every victory he brought peace, a hero all. His legend would never cease. Let us remember this warrior's tale of bravery and strength, that will never fail. For in our hearts his spirit will reside, symbol of hope, forever by our side. Of the unforgettable tides swept ever on. As time, now hoary with age, hurled forth its ashen change, the charge ever san, pale and colourless, that force born to summon decay so endless, 'gainst nature's world each and every day, time and time again, feeding all upon, in its bloodless, white and waxen way. But the everlasting rose would never fade, its lustre even brightening by the day, ever unsuccumbing to the sickly peaked state, draining drawn the life away. Entropic seas still denude the mountains, yet this enduring flower never-endingly has cast deathly time aside, ceaselessly somehow thriving on to that which was the imperishable, the flame of beauty inextinguishable, forever celebrated as immutable, gaining its perpetual permanence from the undying love of the glorious truth. No one spoke for a while. He was here, the one who had raised the ninja empire to heights unknown, the one who had brought forth Rascal as their new leader, the two of them each saving the world several times over. The intensity of life's wondrous being swelled through the operatives. On this, the night of nights, on the forbidden island of Nihao. "Well," said Rascal Puff, the magic dragon, "perhaps we should indeed continue our tales tonight in honor of our guest. If we become pleasantly weary and tired, then that will only add to the sense of what I felt in my trek through the mountains of the Soviet motherland." "You kept me up in those days, Rascal, crossing those ink-black rivers," added Grandmaster West. "While you were the prime candidate to replace me, you were also much too valuable to be running around in the field. I thought to kill two birds with one stone by appointing you, however. Due to some new high-tech, I see that you have found a way back into the fields of many stones, doing both of your jobs very well, I must say." My team does it. You are of that team, being both the coach and a player too, Rascal. I heard you recently flew a helicopter up the side of Mount Blanc. Yes, well then. Thank you, Master. I am no one's master now, Rascal, but more like the Lone Ranger. You will always be the master to me. Grandmaster West began Rascal's tale. Rascal's escape pod of the jetpack went up in flames on the roof from the explosion he had to cause at the prison to be able to escape when his plan had to change abruptly. His support team could not then get in place and had to disperse. Rascal was in the middle of nowhere in Russia. A Soviet helicopter had landed nearby. He becomes now the most forlorn and loneliest man on Earth. Rascal thought back, summoning forth the tale of his prison break, the darkness of death lying all around, the threat ever hovering near. Grandmaster West hung his cane on the back of his chair and walked quite normally over to get a drink. Passiona regarded his now perfectly working knee, eyeing it as he returned, his chair next to hers. The Grandmaster whispered, "I heard that you too had a knee operation. All is not always as it seems. It's not mind over matter. My injury is feigned." "I thought so, for your cane is actually a weapon that would never be confiscated. Our secret."
As Top Secret sat in her 9 zillionth home, away from home, she sighed and smiled into her cup of tea, the simpleness of her last mission's solution to the problem whirling through her mind, whirling like a tempest in a teacup. Reaching for her beloved kitty cat, Perfect, her hip phone started to vibrate. There was a problem. Passiona bounced up, disrupting Perfect rather unceremoniously as she cursed and dashed about getting into her nighttime stealth gear. As she jumped into her craft, she punched the vertical button and soared up, now on her way to the west coast of Vancouver Island. On the other side of the continent, and a bit further down the globe, Quester was in his element. As she silently, yet astonishingly zipped through the air, she had a sudden niggling sensation and thought, oh, whoa. Sure enough, the console started to crackle with static. Top Secret, this is... Passiona quickly installed the scramble device. Ostino, I'm reading you at a rate that can't be. Are you there? Is this some kind of a joke? Why, no, it is not, my darling. I have just recently perfected my little toy. Ostino was stunned, but not wanting to let on, replied, "Ah, yes, the device Rascal and I had wondered about. Where are you headed?" Passiona started to receive a live feed on her computer. It stated, "Top Secret, location halt, new vacation, you are needed in Zurich, Ostino to join. Head there at once, we'll discuss further upon arrival." Passiona silently cursed and thought so much for my undetectable channel. She knew without a doubt what this was about, the billions of missing gold bullion. The infamous Tsarist eagle was stamped on the bar of gold that was mysteriously left on the doorstep just this morning. Imagine a whole bar of gold just left there, with no note, nothing. The Tsarist eagle was key in identifying the origin of it. There were a few other details that were now falling into place. Passiona shook her head to clear it and exhaled a giant breath. With steely resolve, she squared her shoulders and settled in for the fairly long flight.
As Passiona walked up to the hotel, she kept her instincts on high. She had hidden the vessel on the edge of a field. With its new camo design, it blended in perfectly with the surrounding countryside. She checked in as a reporter in town to do a story on the townspeople and to photograph the area, and then climbed the stairs. When she got to her room, she sank down onto the feather-filled mattress. As she was checking her weapons, there was a tapping on the door that was done in a rhythm that was the code for Ostino. As she opened the door, bwamo, she went careening backwards. Rather than stumbling, she went into a backward somersault. When she came up, she pulled her ankle revolver and took aim and fired. The masked perpetrator went sailing backwards. As she was falling, Passiona lunged for her to stop the noise, for she was going to hit a glass table, and caught the masked gunwoman. She let her down to the floor with a soft thud. Thank God the center had made all their weapons silent. She reached for the mask and pulled it free. "No! No!" cried Passiona. Quickly she got the cleanup crew online and told them to get here and to send a medic with them. They thought they were going to be bringing in a prisoner with valuable information. They wouldn't find out until quite some time later that the assailant was actually Passiona's long-lost half-sister. Passiona had searched high and low, and with the help of the center's resources, she was sure she would find her. But nothing had turned up until now. Now it made some sense to her because, of course, that's how she avoided being found. The cleanup crew arrived, and with Passiona's instructions to be gentle, and she meant it, they were off. She quickly got her makeup on and dressed. As she went down the stairs, she noticed the bogey, but his attention quickly went back to his paper. Yeah, right. She strode out somewhat awkwardly as the older folk walk, her wrinkles and the bags under her eyes, along with the varicose veins sewed into her nylons, all made for a great disguise. The hotel had many elderly people booked in. She hailed a cabbie. It was a great disguise for getting a cab, that's for sure. As they started off, she asked the cabbie to just drive. After they had rounded the first bend, she spoke up and said, "I'll pay you 150 euros to lose the tail we have." He said, "You Americans are so much fun." The cabbie was no stranger to driving like a madman, so they careened around corners and finally pulled over and backed into a spot between a barn and a load of hay. They waited. After a half hour passed, she said, "Okay, thank you. Now I need to get to the chateau. Is it around here? The guidebook I have says it's here somewhere, but that's kind of vague." "Lady," said the driver, "sit back and enjoy the view. This ride is on me. I have not had this much fun in years."
They were off. She had to gain entry to the hotel administrator's office. Intel from the center had reported there was valuable information that would help lead to the gold, and also a pleasant surprise to Hitler's infamous Amber Room. "So," said Ostino, "perhaps the director wishes to fund and enlarge his evil empire with Hitler's gold. Perhaps some of it being buried beneath the palace garden reflection that you spied on his teacup. Meanwhile, Bronto watches as some of the butterflies depart Nihao, a minute later flying just south of Waikiki and past Diamond Head. As Passiona arrived at the chateau, she handsomely paid the cabbie and proceeded to the hotel lobby. Graceful chandeliers hung down, sending a glimmering of sparkles over the entranceway. My, me," she exclaimed, "this is more like it." She informed the front desk clerk that she was here on a vacation job to shoot the picturesque scenery of the surrounding areas, and that someone else was arriving. She was just finishing signing the register, and was instructing the bellboys which luggage to carry, and in walks none other than Questa. She went off to her room and in a flash had the bellboy tipped and on his way. She quickly started to apply the facial mask and blue varicose vein nylons to add to her disguise when there came a knock on the door and Ostino's voice saying, "Hello in there." She quickly put on her blouse and skirt, went to the door and saw through the peephole that it was indeed Ostino. Letting him in, he swept her off of her feet in a smooch and a twirl. "How I've missed you, Passiona." They began talking over their plans after a short interlude. The info said that some of the gold bullion was stashed under the well-known and beautiful gardens in Versailles, France. After they discussed their plans, they thought it best to get a move on. Ostino was to go ahead, while Passiona was to stick to her original plans, and afterwards she was to meet Ostino at a predetermined spot in Versailles. Ostino said goodbye, and off he went.
Finishing off her makeup as an old lady, Passiona then weaponed up and strode out of the door. As she went down the elevator, her thoughts were whirling around. The facts that Ostino had told her were extremely disturbing. They had to find the gold before their opponents did. She stopped the elevator on the second floor, needing a distraction. Gaining entry to a room, she quietly shut the door behind her. She fiddled with the phone, putting on a redirector so the call she was going to make would come up on the lobby phone's call display as if it were made from her room phone. She hysterically told them she had been attacked by a masked man in black, and that he had climbed out of her window, and that he was still in sight. As the front desk clerk ran to get his manager, Passiona slipped into the office behind the front counter. She quickly and thoroughly checked the area for the information. Shit, someone was coming. She crouched and waited. One. She whipped around and silenced the clerk with a quick tap to the larynx and a skull tap too, just for good luck, and began searching again, starting to get frantic when, "Hey, what's that?" An object was sticking out. As she grabbed it and noted that it was a disc, she put it into the computer. Scanning through the files, she found what she was after. She came out from behind and resumed heading towards the door, slowly and just a tad awkwardly. Someone was starting to shout, and not wanting to explain, she split, then dug in her bag, finding her vessel's whistle. She blew into it 4 times and waited. The first sign was the slight warm breeze. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, her ship arrived. She went to the side of the ship, opened a panel, and let it identify herself via her DNA. A door opened, with steps folding out and down. She ran in and punched the close button and took the navigator's seat. In a few moments, she had her coordinates typed in, and off she flew, silently, invisibly, heading to Versailles to meet up with Ostino. Passiona was now with Ostino and a few newbies. As they sat waiting for the head cheese to arrive, she was checking out the new agents, fresh out of training. Out of the pot and into the fire was just not needed. There was a lady and her sidekick Honcho. Then there was Dwayne, who supposedly had a picture-perfect memory and could fix anything he touched. That left Courtney, fresh-faced, eager, and a kick-ass fighter. There seemed to be something not so right about some of these people.
Everybody snapped to attention as the full colonel strode into the room. Greetings to you all. For you newcomers, I am, as you most likely already know, the colonel. Okay, let's get started. We have some intel that puts $6 billion worth of gold bullion here, reputedly the same gold that Hitler and his cronies stole and stashed at the end of the occupation of France, in one of the worst possible places, I might add, underneath the garden in Versailles. The problem being, folks, is that back when Hitler had his officers bury the gold, this garden was not yet fully established. So we have some handheld burrowing equipment and, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to tunnel under. This will require, of course, a nighttime op, and we will have on site our newest vessel in the entire fleet. This beauty, which I am proud to tell you, was designed and built by our own agent, Passiona. It has a skin that blends in with any and all surroundings, rendering it invisible. It also has, underneath that skin, a second layer that is composed of millions of nanobots, filled with a mixture of spider silicone polymer which, upon being struck or breached, immediately starts to fill in the hole. It all happens in seconds. This is what you will be going into and out of the site with. Ostino, it is your job to lead this team. All of you in this room will follow Ostino's orders to a T, or you will face instant termination. That will be all, ladies and gentlemen. Good luck. The room was silent until Ostino spoke up. Oh, it that you, Passiona? You look like you have put on a lot of mileage. You look so old. It's a disguise. Whew, what should we do? I don't know yet. I was making 10,000 posts to another thread. Some enemy agents are already around, eyeing the location and dreaming of the gold. I just woke up. Okay, let's go have breakfast. Over breakfast, Passiona and Ostino discussed some of the history of the Amber Room. Could you please pass the jelly, dear? Sure, lover dove, here it is. Where do you want it? The Amber Room, whose interior is made completely of amber and gold, was looted by the Nazis from a castle in St. Petersburg, Russia, in 1941. Although parts of the Amber Room have resurfaced, the vast majority remains missing. The Amber Room represented a joint effort of German and Russian craftsmen. German soldiers disassembled the Amber Room within 36 hours under the supervision of 2 experts. On the 14th of October 1941, Rittmeister Graf Solms-Laubach commanded the evacuation of 27 crates to Königsberg in East Prussia for storage and display in the town's castle. Do you want that bacon, honey? No, you can have it if I can have a bite of your sausage. Orders by Hitler given on the 21st of January 1945 and the 24th of January 1945 allowed the movement of possessions. From that day onwards, Albert Speer's administration could move culture goods of priority. Erich Koch was in charge in Königsberg. Eyewitnesses claimed that crates had been sighted at the railway station. They might have been put aboard the Wilhelm Gustloff, which left Guttenhafen, Gdynia, on January 30th and was sunk by a Soviet submarine.
The Amber Room was never seen again, though reports have occasionally surfaced stating that components of the Amber Room survived the war. Indeed, 2 elements of the room's decoration, but not the amber panels themselves, were eventually rediscovered. There have been numerous conflicting reports and theories, among them that the Amber Room was destroyed by bombing, hidden in a now-lost subterranean bunker in Königsberg, buried in mines in the Ora Mountains, or, as said, taken onto a ship or submarine which was sunk by Soviet forces in the Baltic Sea. Many different individuals and groups, including a number of different entities from the government of the Soviet Union, have mounted extensive searches for it at various times since the war without any success. At one point, in 1998, 2 separate teams, one in Germany, the other in Lithuania, announced that they had located the Amber Room. The first in a silver mine, the second buried in a lagoon. Neither produced the Amber Room. However, in 1997, one Italian stone mosaic that was part of a set of 4, which had decorated the Amber Room, did turn up in Western Germany, in the possession of the family of a soldier who had helped pack up the Amber Room. Leonid Arenstein said I was one of the last people who saw the Amber Room. A literature expert with the non-governmental Russian Culture Foundation, who was a Red Army lieutenant in charge of a rifle platoon in Königsberg in 1945. The Red Army didn't burn anything, he said. Opening the cavern to get into the chamber could be dangerous because it may contain booby traps. It will have to be secured by explosives experts and engineers. That colonel was a fake. After they loaded up their rental van, they were off. Their aliases had them on their honeymoon, and they were now headed to their next love bungalow. Passiona was busily chatting up a storm, pointing out the local flora and fauna. At least that's what the agents following them thought. Passiona related, "Ostino, honey, it appears we have some unwanted company. Shall we use plan A or plan B?" Ostino looked at his beloved and replied, "Smoke or scream?" "I feel it's time we got down to business," and they in unison said B.
Ostino stepped on the gas and tucked right into the next corner. It was a few moments before their tail even noticed something was amiss. Quickly they worked as a team. Jumping out of the van, they quickly popped a tire, put the working dummy droids into place, and each of them rolled out their dirt bikes, shut the van doors and were off, being careful not to disturb the dirt. Precisely 2 minutes later, their tail came around the bend, and right on cue, the dummy droids started to argue. "Henry, I told you to take that darn corner slower. Now we are going to miss the start of our show, darn you. Jennifer, take it easy. I'll have this changed in a jiffy, providing you shut_up." The agents had a look of incredulous disbelief on their faces. Quickly, they turned the next bend and were gone. The dummy droids then got into the vehicle and, gaining speed, rode off the road into a ravine and landed with a loud explosion. Passiona and Ostino were waiting just over the ridge. They kicked the bikes into gear and headed for the cavern of hidden treasures. "This is no time for romance, Austin dear. We'd better get to work." Tears arrived in Austin's and Passiona's eyes. They let them flow. The entire ninja empire was to be in mourning, worldwide operations stopping, as they could, for an hour of silence in respect for the 104-year-old Grandmaster West. At this time, Rascal climbed the highest peak in Nihao and spread his master's ashes to the 4 winds. "Rascal," recalled the master's voice, and his own response. "Rascal, old friend, you must protect eternity. You are the guardian of forever now, and you ever stand at the edge of the abyss, warding off the oblivion of evil. Where will I find you after you leave here, master? I will be with you as the wind and will flow as the water, and so you shall know me when you feel the breeze and quench your thirst in the stream."
Ostino and Top Secret were entering their third cavern. They cautiously creeped forwards. The sound of dripping water echoed throughout the cavern. There was a distinct odor inside of the cave. Passiona was trying to put her finger on the scent. It was familiar, very familiar. Aha! We are not alone in here. The scent was none other than Chanel #5. Up ahead, they saw a shimmering light. They were in their specialized camo gear, which rendered them invisible. Ostino took up the lead while Passiona happily looked at his rear. The light was becoming brighter, but it still had this shimmer to it. As they shared a look at each other, puzzlement was clearly etched on their faces. All of a sudden, coming straight at them, were a couple of barking, frothing black blurs. Quickly, a hand appeared seemingly out of nowhere, and the dogs went for it. Instead of the floating hand being torn to shreds, it opened up, and the dogs quickly gulped the delicious meaty snack off of it. The hand became invisible again. Passiona and Ostino quickly backed up a few feet as the dogs snorted and sniffed at the ground. Because of their specialized camo gear, they were invisible but not unscentable, so they had the drugged chunks of food inside their suits for moments just like this. They now had a problem. The dogs were visible and might break their cover. Up ahead, they heard cursing in German, so they slowed and split up, one on each side of the tunnel. On they went, around a corner, and to their surprise there stood a woman hauling a navy blue steel lockbox that looked heavy. Passiona and Ostino looked at each other and looked back at the woman. She was grunting while she jerked on the box. It moved only a few inches at a time. Just then she loudly cursed again. She stood up and wiped perspiration off of her face with a handkerchief. The scent of Chanel #5 filled the air. Just as she started towards them, Passiona and Ostino backed against the sides of the cavern. The mystery lady then hollered out a couple names in German. Puzzled, she called again. She went. She then turned around and came back. And just then Passiona quickly stepped over to her and pressure pointed until she collapsed. The agents carried her to the cleft they had seen and gently put her down. They went to check out the lockbox. With a simple press of a button, a laser appeared, and the lock on the box was dispatched. Slowly they lifted the lid. Inside were the dull butter-colored bars of gold. The box contained 4. They checked the stamp on the side of the gold bar and saw a bird with outstretched wings. Bingo! They had found some of what they were after. Just then, Passiona felt a cold, hard object being held against her skull. She figured Ostino must be in the same boat as her. She wondered to herself just how did they find them when they were invisible. Passiona knew that she had to act, and right now. She reached up behind her and gripped the weapon. At the same moment she stood up, and with the force of her entire being she pulled, lifted over her shoulder and flipped her assailant flat on the ground. As she stomped a little extra hard for good measure, her foot on her assailant's back as she took aim and saw no one else.
She dragged the still unconscious assailant over to the cleft where she sat him down and put a gun to his head and grinned at him while she said, "You and I are going to have a little fun. First of all, who do you work for? How many of you are there? And where the hell is my partner?" Passiona then noticed a dark stain growing out from his rear and said, "All you have to do is talk, and I'll let you go, unharmed, okay? Okay, I work for her. Name? Francie Oppenheimer. I am the only one with her, and what partner?" Just at that moment, Ostino appeared with an identically clad thug in his grip. Passiona gave a good swift kick in the ribs to the dude on the floor. Now Passiona was pissed. "Apparently you seem to take me for an idiot. This friend of yours here, I'm sure he'll be more than happy to oblige me." "I don't think so. This one's mine. Little shit cold-cocked me and nearly got me down. I found out where their little hideaway is. It will serve us nicely, I think, my dear. First let's get the gold and... Wait, how much gold did you find in there?" "1 box with 4 gold bullion bars. It's the Nazis' loot. The falcon is stamped on the sides. So what to do with these 3? Passiona whispered something in Ostino's ear, making him smile. The crooks were tied up, and with a phone call was made to the local police. A bar of gold bullion left between them. They were going to be out of the agents' way for quite a while to come. The agents gave a wave to their foes and quickly went back to the correct cavern. They watched the police take away the small-time gangsters and sat down and discussed their options. After the smoke cleared, they headed to a new hotel for the night, where they made many new dreams and traveled right on until morning, following the evening star into its fiery depths. Over coffee, they discussed a plan of action for the day. They figured they would start with the gold bars they had in their possession. They would be sent to the center for evaluation. Their job was to locate the rest, and once they got intel back on who the 2 goons and the mo were, they could figure it out from there, or so they hoped. Ostino, looking over his newspaper at Passiona, happened to notice something odd. He put his paper down and gently nudged Passiona under the table. As she looked at him, he looked behind her and lifted his eyebrows. Trouble had walked in, sheathed in silk and wool. Ostino made a motion with his hands on the table. Passiona understood, weapons at the ready, hidden. The couple approached. Passiona dug in her purse and thought of the oldest trick in the book. "Albert, honey, I have to go to the ladies' room. Can you order me some coffee to go?" As she got up, she showed Ostino what she had in her palm. Passiona got up, and as she slid out of her seat, she turned to walk and stumbled. Reaching out to steady herself, she grabbed the closest thing, the man in the wool suit, and stuck a microscopic transmitter to his coat. "Oh my goodness, excuse me, sir." Passiona strode away to the ladies' room and quickly turned the other way. She waited for a couple minutes, and there Ostino came, the 2 of them taking their leave in the van.
They were on the road for a short time when they noticed their friends were on their tail. So predictable. "So, honey, what mode of transportation do we have this time?" "We have the special gunner gliders. I've been dying to try them out." Ostino sped up. They had to get a sufficient lead in order to stop and get the gliders out. He pulled over. They quickly ran to the back doors, put the ramp down, and rolled out 2 gunners. As soon as they were strapped in, they started up the motors, and straight up they shot. Ostino gave out an exhilarated shout, with Pasiona squealing in delight not far from him in the air. Their next job was to gun down their enemy. With their helmets on, Pasiona shouted out, "Let me, let me!" Ostino replied, "Okay, but I get the next ones." Pasiona spun her glider around and was shocked to see a missile coming straight for her. She swooped to the right and said, "Ostino, missile alert, let's get the bastard." The two of them made short work of the enemy. They flew on, and as they were drawing near, Pasiona's locator started to beep, and with that she thought, "Oh crap! Ostino, our target from the inn, is still kicking and apparently at our location ahead of us. How did he do that? Magic? No. They are twins? Negatory. Triplets? No siree. Helicopter? Nope. I give up." As they finished up their breakfast, the two agents were hunkered over the table, whispering when the shaking started. Pasiona's face was a mask of shock and horror, while Ostino quickly whisked her up and towards the doorway. Through the screams and debris dropping around him, Ostino dodged left and right, Pasiona right behind him. They burst out the doorway and ran to the van. As Ostino took the wheel, Pasiona began to get their gear out from the hidden compartments. As she strapped on the belt, she loaded weapons for them both and equipped Ostino's belt while they were on the fly. The shaking seemed to have stopped, but now their main concern was that of collapsed caverns. Ostino pointed out the window at a house on the hillside, broken in half and squashed as if a big hand had just hit it like a gavel hitting its mark. They pulled off of the main road and drove up the hillside, as far as the vehicle would take them. Coming to a stop, the two of them put on the rest of their gear and went to the back of the van. Pasiona pulled out the ramps and locked them into place as Ostino backed out first, one, then two of the giant mosquito-looking machines. Pasiona pulled a long zippered bag out of the van, and they each proceeded to lock their ultralight blades into place. They quickly went over their plan of attack. If needed, they were hoping that this lucky turn of events was going to work in their favor. They mounted and started up. After a pre-flight check, they were off. The advantage was going to be short-lived, so they had to reach their destination as quickly as possible. They were in the air, looking a lot like prehistoric mosquitoes with some firepower. They had all of the usual gadgets, plus a few that were brand new. Ostino told Pasiona that they were reaching the caverns, but they were going somewhere different this time. As they flew over the site of their last shenanigans, they took note of the enemy. There was one truck and two automobiles. They flew on.
There we are, my dear. The mansion of the Baron Manchuzin. I think we should go down before we get noticed. Ostino, I have the geotransducer. It'll pick up any entrances that could be hidden. We are going in through the bowels, and I do hope we don't have to smell anything. Sharing a laugh, they stashed their bugs in the bushes. They heard the first of the barking mutts coming at them. They decided to use the stun ray. As they waited, they heard a chopper start up, and then came the dogs. Ostino pointed the ray and squeezed the trigger. Down went #1 and then #2. While Ostino had been dealing with the dogs, Pasiona was searching for the underground tunnel with the geo gun. She picked up a reading that showed an opening, but strangely enough, it wasn't there. She then realized why. "Ostino, over here." As they both were looking at what she had found, they heard the chopper getting closer. With no time to spare, they quickly moved the manhole cover aside, and flash helmets donned, down they started. Ostino pulled the manhole cover and a clump of sod with it over to the opening, and thunk! It was back in place. It was then that they heard the chopper. Still, through steel, Ostino poked Pasiona's arm and motioned down. As they looked, they saw blades going around faster and faster. She looked at Ostino with fright in her eyes. "Survival," thought Pasiona. "We can do this." She quickly reached for Ostino's stun ray and coupled it with her pulse weapon. Then she motioned Ostino to plug his ears. She pointed, jammed a pebble into the trigger to make it stick, and quickly plugged her own ears. As they watched, it seemed the blades were slowing down. But no, they were speeding up. They looked at each other. Pasiona had tears in her eyes. The blades were going faster and faster, and then they smelled something burning, like wiring. Yes, they were going to be all right, it seemed. "Maybe we should retire to Tahiti again, dear. Do we need this gold? This is really getting dangerous for our health." Bora Bora. Darling, that sounds absolutely delightful. I can hardly wait until I feel the sand slip betwixt my lower digits. And, come nighttime, I think we shall have our own slice of paradise, feeling the warm breeze ruffle the hairs on our body as we... Feel our passions soar above and beyond, our heartbeats beating as one with each other and with the universe itself. Love is a beautiful thing. When people fall in love, it is not planned that way. It sort of creeps up on you and sidles in on your heart and soul. For people to question it is only natural. They must wonder what, how. I found myself one day while I was meeting and talking with Austino. I literally found myself when I found Austin. I felt and feel whole. It shocks some people, while others embrace the love and capture a little slice of heaven within themselves. This, everybody, is love, and is nothing to be ashamed of, or to laugh at, or to scoff at. For those that do or have, that's okay too. I really don't care what others might scoff about. To me, that is a serious waste of time, and I have more important things to do, like love my Austino.
As the burning smell started to dissipate, the fan blades began to slow down. Austino led Passiona toward the now halted blades that had almost made chop suey out of them. They stepped through the blades cautiously. Up ahead in the distance was a shimmering light. Passiona spoke up. Austino, what do you think that is? I don't know, darling. Why don't we sneak up further? The two headed slowly upwards. As they got closer to the shimmering light, they heard voices as well. The agents shared a look, both knowing that stealth was now key to their success. Closer still, Austino put his hand up and signaled stop. They both realized they were looking through some kind of grating. The shimmering light was a disco ball slowly twirling around and sending the bouncing reflections of light through the grating. It appeared that there was a party in full swing at the Barrens. They stepped back a few paces. I guess we are in the air conditioning tunnel, says Passiona. Austino agrees and adds that it most likely was as well an emergency escape tunnel. Passiona says, Austino dear, don't you think they are going to realize their air conditioning is down? I think we should hurry and find our way out of here. Austino agrees, and the two agents head on into a labyrinth of tunnels. To make sure of their own escape route, they had marked the walls with a special ink that was visible only to them with their night vision goggles. She signaled to Austino to come hither. She was pointing through another grating, and well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. There was the Baron Manchusin himself in a very long room, which looked to be a dining hall, but now instead sat bars upon bars of butter-soft gold bullion. The Baron was looking quite pleased with himself. Austino signaled to Passiona to follow him. They quietly discussed their plan and proceeded onwards. Austino attached a tube of knockout gas to the outermost point of the grating. They donned their special headgear, helmets and all. She pushed the button and voila, gas was now leaking into the room. The two watched, and after the Baron was asleep, entered the room. The two agents set to work, taking pictures of all of the gold, and the stamps on the sides especially. Austino was busy inserting homing devices into several gold bars. It was an easy task, as the gold was as soft as modeling clay, almost. The two agents heard some voices. They quickly went back into the tunnel and quietly inserted the grating into place once more, and removed the empty gas bomb and clay, and hurried back the way they'd come. They hurried onwards, past the dancing and festivities, on along until they hit the tunnel where the blades were. There was movement. Austino jumped out and quickly and efficiently dispatched the enemy, most likely a patrol to find out why the conditioning had stopped. They climbed through the blades and out of the tunnel into the night. They were not out of the woods yet, so to speak. As Austino quietly relayed to mission headquarters what they'd done, Passiona was putting together their flight bugs. She was just finishing with the last blade when they heard trouble arriving. Quickly they jumped aboard, fired up the engines and took to the air. They had to use evasive maneuvers to avoid getting hit by enemy fire, but they made it. Now to reach their safe house.
The Unity was rudely bumped and spilled a martini when the two dashing agents came into the hotel lobby. He welcomed them to the hotel and offered up a game of cards to pass the time. They began playing Hearts, a game in which every heart taken counts a point against you, with the Queen of Spades counting 13 against. However, if one could capture all the hearts plus the Queen of Spades, one would gain 26 points, which was called Shooting the Moon. They each picked 3 bad cards depending on their aims and passed them to another person. The Unity lead a spade, the Jack, since hearts were not yet broken, if void in the lead suit, putting the pressure on those ending up with high spades, who perhaps could not survive several spade leads without the danger of taking the trick with the Queen, or capturing it with the Ace or the King. By leading the Jack, the Unity would probably retain the lead if the last to follow didn't safely play the Ace or King, and so then he could lead another spade, which would tell everyone that he either had no spade danger himself or had a lot of spades. Thus began the analysis of who might have the queen, for it wouldn't be good to play the ace or the king ahead of that person. There is a 2-card kitty, 2 cards always being left over from the deal to the 4 players, since the 2 jokers were used as the one of diamonds and the one of clubs, and so whoever took the first point, either a heart or the queen of spades, could trade cards into the kitty, exchanging them, improving their hand, the point cards left in the kitty still counting. All of a sudden, Passiona got up so fast she accidentally pulled the tablecloth off. Of course, everything else came with it too. She cursed a blue streak, then noticed all of the eyebrows that had shot up. Stumbling along with her shoe now caught in the trails of the tablecloth, she tries to gently free her foot. She was now red and sweating from the embarrassment. "Excuse me, people, to round out the entertainment, I thought I'd add this." With a sassy little grin, Passiona spins around and with her back facing her now captivated audience, pulls down her panties and nylons in one fell swoop and bends over. Then, peeking through between her legs at her now stunned audience, says, That's all, folks," and yoinks up her rigging and runs out of the room, laughing and crying at the same time. Passiona had attempted to win the first round of hearts by literally shooting the moon. However, this, while extremely exciting, did not exactly count for the scoring. The next trick was won by the 3rd player with the ace of spades, perhaps not fearing the drop of the queen since she may have passed it to the right. The last to play dropped the 10. The king was still out there somewhere. She led a low club, perhaps being out of spades or having the queen herself. The card game was being played in Austin's new art gallery, which he had somehow mysteriously funded. The gang inside the art studio began to hear a subtle and eerie clinking of glass. As the sound grew louder, a strange yet familiar voice began to chant. "Warriors, come out to play! Warriors, come out to play I! Warriors, come out to play EA!"
The gallery window was crowded with curious onlookers. Every face was void of emotion. The silence was heavy and thick like syrup. Time seemed to stand still. Austin's art gallery, where the entertainment was taking place, was of course protected. Racecar had somehow hacked into the background sound system with an elaborate subliminal message embedded in the music now playing, which may have been the cause of Passiona's unusual behavior, she being very sensitive to matters intuitive. At the spontaneous outbreak of kung fu frivolity, protective UHMW shielding had been deployed automatically around all of the artwork. Furthermore, an anti-gravity effect had been built into this structure at enormous cost. And so now all those in attendance found themselves floating erratically while in playful, for the most part, combat. The Unity was clutching his cards, a slight frown on his brow as he wondered if this meant that his winning hand was all for naught. Label Wench had slipped her cards into a zipped pocket of her riding breeches and had grabbed the bottle of Shiraz from the table. Timing was excellent, as the variety she had ordered was using the latest in screw-cap technology, so the wine inside was safe, as long as she kept it away from present company. Austin, anticipating a possible attempt on his art, was wearing some kind of belt that allowed him to make compensatory adjustment for the lack of gravity. He was the only one still in a horizontal position. Meanwhile, Racecar was having a blast with the horse, Caramel, who quite understood that she was unlikely to injure Racecar in the present environment. Caramel, given to teleportation, although not time travel, unless you count the difference between time zones, had a much better understanding of many topics than her mistress. This was no problem as she looked after Label Wench on their journeys, so Racecar was leaping onto Caramel's back, whence Caramel would attempt to be a bucking bronc in freefall. Racecar would eventually fall off, mostly from laughing, and then Caramel would gently bunt her into a wall or ceiling and wriggle herself into position to catch the rebounding Racecar, whence they started all over again. Label Wench had finally found a secure niche to brace herself in and was watching all with mild amusement. She did know enough not to take the cap off the wine bottle until gravity was restored. Meanwhile, Passiona had heard all the hoots and hollers and was scoping things from beyond the range of the anti-gravity room, waiting to see if Ostino wanted her to deploy the sprinkler system or any other of their many defense mechanisms to cut short this mayhem.
Ostino was thinking that he might have to call Graham for a touch-up to the paint, but otherwise, what the hey? Everyone was having a riot, and all of the excitement might even bring in a few more visitors and prospective art dealers or clients, and perhaps even some Nazi stragglers. Another catalyst for the fun kung fu pandemonium was that Passiona, having given up shooting the moon with a long but non-runnable club suit, someone was holding back the king, gave it up, and having counted the spades, knew that only the ace was out. It wasn't in the kitty, as she had taken a heart and traded into the kitty, led the queen of spades, knowing it had been captured by some unfortunate person. Racecar much enjoyed the silent whisperings of Caramel and with focused determination dropped to the floor. She had learned much from the beautiful friend, all her friends. The train was coming. Vibrations could be felt for some time now. Racecar took one last look around, with a flip of her hand sent kisses on the wind to everyone. Fare thee well, dear friends, till we meet again, and she walked out the door. Passiona was back in her groove, and was greatly pleased to see that her newfound friends had a good time when they got together. She was especially pleased to be leading Ostino by his hand, with a coy yet come-hither look on her face, into the room of treasures, filled with gold. Therein, a period of time went by where love was shared, yet can't be written of, lest someone be embarrassed. The partying had been going strong, and so the remnants of the Nazi gold diggers had figured this to be a good time to break into the back room and retrieve their gold. The music that was playing outside for the lunar eclipse gently changed to the song 503 from the Angels and Amp Demons movie, and so now everyone knew that the back room was being raided. The Nazis grabbed the bullion bars that were in plain sight, plus the 2 from the card table, and then opened the chests with the gold signs on them. The knockout gas escaped and found them. They made it but a few feet, collapsing. The NIA agents swooped back in and carried the woozy ones away for interrogation, the raiders' golden touch having now gone numb. One knocked out Nazi managed to open an eye, but for a few seconds. It was one of the last visions he would never remember. Passiona took out a remote and flicked a switch, turning off the art projections, which then disappeared. Then she removed the holographic disc, removing the gallery and IT furniture. It all never happened. It was never there. Nothing had happened there. Nothing was as it seemed. Passiona and Ostino retreated to their local and secret hideaway on the sea, in the south of France, performing there a study of materialism and romanticism. Everything seemed real there, they noted, but for some obvious cases of silicone fraud seen in the pool and on the beach. Their room was so unassuming that its entrance was via an unmarked door in the stairwell. The hotel had utilized the space behind the elevator next to the boiler room. Bad guys could not find them there, nor in the town filled with transients, visitors from all over the world. Same with all the workers. They came from afar to work during their summers off from college or whatever. The room even had a little hump and a downslope just inside the door, so even if any bad guys did get in, they would immediately fall down. Passiona and Ostino were soon off to the depths of the Sea of Passion.
The Foreign Intelligence Service, or SVR, is Russia's primary external intelligence agency. The SVR is the successor of the first Chief Directorate, FCD, of the KGB, as of December 1991. Vladimir is famous for its unique white stone cathedrals, towers, and palaces. Unlike any other northern buildings, their exteriors are elaborately carved with high-relief stone sculptures. Only 3 of these edifices stand today: the Assumption Cathedral, the Cathedral of St. Demetrios, and the Golden Gate. It is also the home of the secondary SVR, a misnomer, for it was here that many of the more outrageous plots were hatched, planned, and carried out. Anton and Sergei had recruited and managed the insertion of the best of the Soviet-era nuclear scientists into the secret Iranian nuclear bomb facility, one that Iran was recently forced to reveal. Anton and Sergei were now busy getting the Russian scientists back out, coordinating it through Anna, for just about everything went through Anna. The SVR had a mole in its building, one who had so far revealed the existence of the Iranian nuclear plant, but not yet the hand of Russia therein, nor the S-500 anti-aircraft system being installed that would protect the plant from destruction. Therefore, the SVR building had been put under lockdown. All transmissions and phones stopped, but for one. Colonel Patov, the de facto and continuing head of the SVR in Vladimir, pondered the graveness of the situation, now wishing that he'd never had to run the damn place. The former commander, the merciless General Burkov, had been done away with by Frederick in San Francisco a few years back. A worldwide manhunt had produced nothing. Burkov had been replaced by General Nikitin, A man who ran the SVR remotely and very poorly at that. One who had never even bothered to have set foot in the place, preferring the comforts of Moscow in the new digital age of armchair management. Patov sat back. He'd been given a week to find the mole, must show progress in 2 days. He didn't miss Burkov, that crazy son of bitch, but he missed Nikitin strangely, having never met him, for it was all too lonely at the top here now, but what the hell, for Nikitin had always taken all the credit for Patov's fine work. To blazes with them all and their kind, he thought. Who is spilling our secrets? Not me, that's for sure. He thought of his wife, Patova. They usually added Anna. Perhaps they could run away from this thing, but no, the Russians left no survivors for events like this. Yet, Patov had already secretly moved his finances to Switzerland, knowing well how to circumvent the ever-present prying eyes. Anna had worked her way up, over 20 years or so, to a position of much importance, the coordinator of all activities. She was pure Soviet Russian from birth, reliable and untouchable, even having a golden heart. She was also a member of the Ninja Empire, their deepest plant anywhere. It was the end, she knew, for there was no micromanaging of this kind of leak, as had been done with the others, to make it appear otherwise. There was no way out. Duty now spelled death. Nor could she shift the blame to Anton or Sergei. That just wouldn't be right. Still, she would try to hold out, perhaps think of something. Her mind drew a blank. Patov paced his office, then called upon his major, Igorov, for company. Anything not to have to go through this alone. They finally decided to put all 3 suspects through the rigors of the new and improved truth serum process that had never failed, although a few had died from it. Not Anna, Igorov protested. Yes, Anna too, commanded Patov. I know, but we must be sure. See you in the morning. Morning had dawned all too soon for Colonel Patov, now drinking a cup of strong black coffee to jolt him back into the day from a very restless night. He read the report. What? All 3 had passed the truth test, then it was given again and all 3 had passed it again. Major Igorov entered, saying, "We double-checked the computers, only those 3 had access, and you, of course, but you did not do it." "Why not suspect me, Igorov?" "Because I was sent here to keep an eye on you, Colonel, and it was not you." "Thank you, Igorov, at least in this case anyway, for spying on me." "My pleasure to vindicate you, sir." "But they are all pure-blood Soviets. Who then?" "It can only be one of them, sir." The phone rang, displaying the name Nikitin. Patov jumped out of his chair. "What does he want? I thought I had 2 days for progress." Patov lifted the receiver and listened. As one must do when a superior calls, just saying, "Understood," before hanging up rather than being hung up upon. "Igorov, our S-500 anti-aircraft construction site has now been revealed to the world." "There is such a project?" "Yes. To protect the Iranian nuclear plant. It's but 1/3 completed though." "What to do?" "Make it look like it was abandoned. Put dust on it, whatever. Get our people out of there immediately." "Will do, sir." "And Igorov, one more thing." "Yes?" "We now have but 1 more day to find the mole, or Nikitin is coming here tomorrow to personally execute all 3 suspects." "Damn, we need these people. It's the old way, Igorov, the sure way." "I'll try, sir." "No try do." Maybe Nikitin leaked the information himself. "Unlikely, he's an old hardliner, and if he did, there's nothing we can do about it." "Agreed. Find that mole or I'm dead." "Yes, sir." There was no progress during day, even after Patov had personally and intensely interviewed all 3 suspects. Exhausted, Patov went to sleep early, sending nothing to Moscow. General Nikitin's armored limo pulled up outside the SVR building around 3 a.m., its flags flying. Major Igorov, being on night duty, received their demands at the front door and went up at once to wake Pavlov. "You have to get up, sir. Nikitin is here." "What? In the middle of the night?" "Yes, sir." "Tell them we're under lockdown. No one comes in. They're waiting outside." "And no one goes out." "I had to bring the 3 suspects out." "What?" "I could hardly disobey them, sir." "Well then, what else do they want?" "You, sir." "Me?" "They insist, immediately, and as you are. Igorov, take over. You will not see me alive again." Pavlov was already a beaten man, an inmate waiting on death row, and so he, dazed as he had become, collected a few personal items and went out into the street in his nightclothes. The limo door opened, he got in. A general of the Russian army was sitting there in full uniform, looking most unhappy. The limo sped off, no one saying a word as all the while the miles passed on by through the empty city streets. Patov knew to stay silent unless spoken to. He noted the outskirts of the city passing, and yet no one said anything. The country kilometers now eating up the limo with their darkness. A perfect spot for an execution, he thought. Patov couldn't take it anymore. "Where are you taking me, Nikitin?" he bellowed. No answer. Patov stayed quiet, thinking better of his outburst. They stopped at an old farmhouse, pulled the limos inside, got out, and lit a small candle. "So, this is it," figured Patov. No one spoke. Nikitin lit up a smoke and offered one to Patov, who gladly took it and lit it up to calm his nerves. Halfway through the smoke, Nikitin leaned in as if to speak. The face somehow seemed familiar, but Patov couldn't place it. "Colonel Patov," said Nikitin very slowly, "you transferred all your funds." No one could know this, thought Patov, but they did. For safekeeping. To use after you'd escaped this mess? No. It was no use. They had him. Another long silence ensued. "Remember the tunnel, Patov?" Patov was really confused now. "What tunnel?" "The one under the train tracks." Patov strained his memory. So many incidents over the years. Then he began to recall some bits and pieces of it. "I'm not exactly sure. Remember, it's lights out for me?" "Ah, yes, you reached up and smashed the only light bulb in the tunnel, leaving your sweater hanging there in the dark to fool us. Then you escaped. You are... Frederick." "I am. You should have shot me on sight. I couldn't. I know." "And you've come to dispose of me, like you did Burkov?" "No, that was a different case." "He sure was. Burkov was a madman. You, Patov, were just doing your job. Then where are you taking me?" "To Switzerland, where you can meet up with your money and your wife." "My wife?" "Yes, she's in the rear partition of the second limo." "You would do this for me? One who once tried to capture you? Is this some kind of a trick? Well, you can't stay in Russia now, can you? And we will let bygones be bygones. Pardon my Russian, but it means that all is forgiven and forgotten." Petova stepped out and embraced her husband. Patov looked up and over at Frederick, finally asking, "All this in exchange for what I know?"
Frederick smiled. "We already know most of what you know." "You are free, Colonel Patov? Is there such a word in Russian?" "Yes, but at least I will bring you up to date." "I know, Patov. Just let it sink in while we get you some traveling clothes." Patov returned to his chair and sank into it, no longer fully knowing how or who to trust. Patov added, "Anna must work for you, Frederick." "She does, and she is now safe within the limo." "And the other two? They have to come along." "I see." Anna stepped out and walked over to Patov. Patov looked up and said, "Ah, Golden Heart, I knew it had to be you. You were not meant for this cruel line of work, Patov. I put in a good word for you." "Thank you," said Patov, almost crying now. "My treat." If I may ask, how did you get the information out? All the emails, phones and such are monitored every second. We even look at strange conversations for unusual word use. That would be telling. Really? It's beyond all that. That's not possible, is it? Frederick looked at a secure readout on his phone indicating that Operation Fire was now underway. A few moments ago, the Israeli defense minister had been on the phone to the American president, who replied, just before hanging up, "Thanks for the notice and Godspeed." 6 Israeli jets were already in the air, 1 far out in front, 3 in the middle and 2 lagging back, all of them quickly approaching the Iranian border. The defense minister and his aides had gathered around the computer screens. "We almost waited too long," said one. "The S-500 site is partly operational, although they are now covering it with dirt to hide it." "It can still operate through the dirt. Yes, indeed. Why did we wait for a madman to come through on his public promise to destroy us?" "Yes, especially when such a boast would only make our actions tonight all the more necessary and right in the eyes of the world. We are getting soft. Maybe. Iran is even isolated from its Muslim neighbors. Insanity. The jets have crossed the border, sir."
The S-500 anti-aircraft system came to life through the dirt, noting one blip and taking out the lead Israeli aircraft. But it was only a drone, carrying no one and nothing of interest but a missile now tracking out of the debris and down through the sky toward the S-500 site, its approach obscured at first. They will never see it coming, they will glory in the kill and will not even be checking their radars for a second or two. They didn't, and so a large part of the S-500 apparatus was soon destroyed, the next 3 jets finishing the job and continuing on, the 2 jets in the rear now closing through the freed sky. "What's with those last 2 jets, sir? Are they special?" "Ah, you do not have security clearance for that." "Indeed I do." "Yes, you do, I am joking. Suppose that our bunker buster missiles do not complete the job, the Iranian site being too deep, as it is rumored to be." "Then they could salvage it, and if it was far enough along in its enrichment process." "Yes. Are you telling me what I think you're telling me? Yes. The first wave is at the target, sir, and dumping the bunker busters. Get me the live satellite on my screen. Analysis? Those lines are the depths reached by the bunker busters, sir. That block still beneath is the nuclear plant as newly illuminated by a special probe that we sent in first. No good, was it? The busters did not reach the target, sir. The defense minister transmitted a code to the last two jets, and then bowed his head in prayer. All waited. They've dropped their nukes, sir, fighting fire with fire. Frederick received an update. Gentlemen, ladies, and Colonel Patov and wife, we've entered a new age. The area of the Iranian nuclear plant and its surroundings will be uninhabitable for several centuries to come. God save us all, cried Patov. Major Igorov took temporary command of the SVR. He would later find that his command continued, for the real Nikitin had mysteriously disappeared, and no one would ask any questions of this, it being the old Soviet way. Igorov now sat at Patov's desk, ready for the tasks to come. He took a rare moment to break character and smiled to himself. No improved truth serum injections had actually happened, for he'd only gone through the motions. He would carry on Anna's legacy, for he too was a member of the Ninja Empire. Throughout the day we sat beside a brook, reading with life its most wonderful book, then slept with each other in a sweet nook, and this of her and me was all it took. Art and poetry enrich human experience, but they're no substitutes for the living of it. Like Keats' figures on the urn, should we live life less? No, because what is deathless is also lifeless. Raskol placed a call to the head of Mossad, which is the Institute for Intelligence and Special Operations, being the national intelligence agency of Israel. It seems that Iranian scientists are disappearing, that much is going wrong in their nuclear plants, and that many of the needed shipments are not arriving. Do you know anything about that? Who, me? No, nothing, but we know even less than nothing about some other problems that they are having. Do you know anything about those? No, not a thing. Thanks, now we both know something. Good work, you too. Quester and Passiona recently addressed the new recruits. No matter what agencies we use or blend into, we are the Ninja Empire, and can act as that alone, going where governments and even CIAs cannot go, as we are not a nation, nor represent any in particular. This is why our Grandmaster is higher than the leaders of all countries. We do good only for the sake of good, performing the task and then getting out, not even sticking around to enjoy the scenery. Your reward is the satisfaction of a job well done, along with shelter, food and travel. We have chosen many from the martial arts as they have great discipline of body and mind. We do not kill innocent bystanders if they've seen our faces. In fact, we don't kill them at all. We use 2 backup teams, not just one, but they rarely come into play. That is where you will start.
The Taliban's top leader, Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, has been captured by American and Pakistani intelligence teams. This arrest has been confirmed by unnamed US officials and 2 Taliban figures. Despite the Taliban not signing the Geneva Convention, the US has called in the NIA to question the prisoners without resorting to torture. Through this interrogation, they have discovered information about nuclear material being brought into the US. However, the cell involved is self-contained, making it difficult to contact them. Meanwhile, Analog, the southern field commander of the Ninja Empire, has been alerted to the sinking of a Coast Guard drug interdiction vessel off the coast of Texas. His aide, Time Particle, believes that this event is unusual and suspects that either a large amount of drugs or something more potent is being brought into the country. Analog suggests using their new satellite system, which has super high-definition video capabilities. Time Particle is impressed and asks if it has photos better than Google Earth. Analog explains that it can capture HD video of the entire Gulf and southern region, but the storage is reused after a few days due to the large amount of data. They decide to review the footage and discover that the Coast Guard vessel was sunk by 2 speedboats and the attackers are now fleeing at high speed. They fast forward the video to track the speedboats to their landing point. Analog requests oversight and control of the laser satellite, but it is currently on the other side of the world. Instead, he asks for a live stealth bomber, which is already in the region and under NIA control. Time Particle informs Analog that the attackers have reached the Texas shore and are loading something into a white van. They pinpoint the van and continue to follow it in real time with the help of Nihao, who grants them ultimate authority to proceed. The voiceover ends with Time Particle reporting that the attackers have entered Houston proper.
Holy Christ, I need 100 cement trucks. Alert Houston police pursuit, but have them stay back, slowing all traffic. The terrorists might get scared and detonate, and we're not quite ready yet. Redirect the stealth jet, highest priority. Have the counter-terrorism official at the next toll booth take a special reading on that van. Get me the US president. Meanwhile, ironically, at Capitol Hill, the politicians are again raising a fuss about the severe prisoner interrogation techniques. Sir, the van ran the toll booth, but we got a reading that the nuclear device is live and armed. Damn, that means they are approaching their target very soon. NASA? It would appear to be. Evacuate the area to the east first. How's our jet doing? Com. They're in the area, having just pulled out of Mach 4, just about ready. Here's a direct connection to the pilot. Pilot, the nuclear emergency has been verified. Do not hit the van directly. The device is armed. Blast some bunker buster holes just ahead of the van, such that it will plunge into one of them. Execute at will. Over. Com. The cement trucks are on the way. General Rascal likes your plan. Have the police pursuit stop and block all lanes to stop all the traffic behind the van. The traffic ahead of it will be able to just move on in time. Com. I have the US President. Mr. President, NIA requests you to prepare for DEFCON 3, as we may very soon have a nuclear explosion within Houston city limits if we can't stop it. The President, will do, have been following. The stealth bomber bore down upon the speeding van like a giant bird of prey, blasting 3 holes in the freeway just in front of it, the van soon plunging into the first one. The jet sent a few missiles nearby, some of which caused some debris to partly fill the hole the van was in. Nuclear explosion? No, not yet. They were still 3 minutes from NASA. Keep the area clear. We have an underground nuclear blast confirmed, low megatons. The wind is still out of the west. There's not much population there. Ah, good luck. Indeed. This should end some of those discussions in DC. Let's video backtrack those speedboats whence they came. Get on it. Rascal had had enough with the terrorists, the last straw being the nuclear attempt on NASA. He ordered all operatives to terminate all the suspects not in custody that they'd identified from observation and their insiders' information. Lloyd looked stunned, for his subjectives were massed in the cauldron towns of Miran Shah and Mirali, the very epicenters of extremist activity, the ultimate boomtowns of terror in Pakistan's belt of militants. He thought of renting a yacht for a sham of a party, but it wasn't their style. Alerting his insider, Lloyd dressed as a dervish, for he could otherwise hardly blend in, and awaited a special celebration after services in which he was to whip them into a frenzy of subjective hatred for anything non-Islamic. He had completed 2 slow whirls, the build-up to further acceleration, drawing all eyes wrapped upon him, turning ever faster on one leg. Out of his cloak came his submachine gun, it firing round and round as he twirled, his insider watching and taking care of trouble, the militant terrorists all falling dead, their dreams of virgins shattered. Enough is enough.
When all of Florida went under, being that it was already sea level, the world woke up, but it was much too late. A year later, every coastal city in the world had been inundated, for water always finds its way in. Northern Canada, along with its eastern and western sections, was no more. Only the now more temperate interior remained dry, it filling up with more and more people and tropical birds by the day. Cynthia had moved to the cabin, for Lake Ontario was acting up. A small portion of Siberia was usable too for now, and an iffy part of Argentina. Alaska was gone to its mountains, as were Central and Latin America and Mexico. The heat was melting the ice caps. The equatorial regions had become unbearable, the temperatures now reaching 135 degrees F. Most of these people really had no place to go. The pace of the disaster was startling, exceeding even the grimmest of predictions. Australia's population, being mostly coastal, had retreated to the thin edge between its useless interior and the deep blue sea. Greybeard was holding on, being one who was acclimated to extremes, as well as to living off the land. He'd climbed a sturdy tree when the tidal wave swept inland, perching there for a day, until the waters had receded enough for him to slog his way home. His tiny car with its 2-horsepower engine had been washed away, but he still had the big one at home. His ranch was soggy but otherwise secure. The great inland sea reappeared, then evaporated, and then returned. Meteorology had become a fruitless science. Summer was now year-round. He readied his camping gear just in case. The Yukon was a mess too, yet Label Wench as well was a survivor. The dogs had been leashed, the sled provisioned. Cars could not brave the mud and the slush, so she was off on the ultimate Yukon quest with her sled and dogs. Whitehorse was dying. Prof Pat was fine where he was, although the Great Lakes were enlarging even with their locks having been closed, for the water runneth over. All this from a Bindu dot, he thought. Resistance was futile, for water was slippery stuff, its tiny hydrogen atoms easily rolling around the oxygen. Various schemes and solutions had been endlessly debated, most of them being as tough on mankind as the heat, the rest of them unattainable. It was all happening much too quickly. The estimates had been way off. Nature was now a dragon, and she had roared and was spewing her fiery breath upon her own fragile planet.
Some tried to live in basements, but the heat found them. Some dug underground, but the floods came. Many near extinctions had happened before, one being only 74,000 years ago when, at Toba in northern Sumatra, a supervolcano erupted. 6 years of volcanic winter followed this eruption, bringing pre-humans to the very edge of elimination. There were but a few thousand of them left around, since very little light could reach the dusty ground. It took 20,000 years for them to recompose from the cauldron of fire that had almost brewed humanity away. It was from this handful of hardy souls that we modern humans arose. Back to the heat. Due to the intense global warming and ice melting that was about to reach a runaway exponential point, the weather patterns had been greatly altered and were bringing numerous and severe storms all over the globe, causing much interior flooding, plus wiping out most of the crops. The rate of destruction was becoming astronomical. No one could keep up with it. It was everyone for themselves. 2012 had long since passed without incident, and now it was 2024. Millions had perished in a matter of a few weeks, and there was little government infrastructure working save for the covert ninja empire. However, humans were hardly a match for nature gone wild. It could and would only get worse unto the end. Back in 1960, Bob Christensen had looked around everywhere at the Yellowstone National Park grounds for its volcanic caldera but had found it nowhere. By some coincidence, NASA had photos from a recently tested high-altitude camera. Astounded, Bob learned why he failed to spot the caldera. It was virtually the entire park, 2.2 million acres of area. Yellowstone must have blown up with a violent misery far beyond anything known throughout our history. The crater was 40 miles across. There was also a huge gap in the mountain chain. The cataclysm had been even beyond the scale of what imaginations could have dreamt up. It had thousands of times more monstrous molten fire than Mount St. Helens. Krakatoa was but a firecracker in comparison. Yellowstone's eruptions average one really massive blow every 600,000 years, the last one 630,000 years ago. So it was long overdue and perhaps pending, but still, that could be thousands of years off. The ninja leaders and their teams flew into Niihau on their last tanks of gas, there to take sanctuary and a vote for a desperate but uncertain plan. The landing strip now had quite a tricky slope to it. Many near extinctions had occurred before, but none in modern times. However, death seemed to be a way of life throughout history. Of all extinctions, the Permian was the largest, happening 245 million years ago, when 95% of species perished, suddenly disappearing from the fossil recording. Life had almost come to a total obliterationing. That we are even here was due to the dinosaurs and 90% of all the species being wiped out. A small and nervous, shrew-like creature looked out. The dinosaurs, the forever kings of the earth, were gone. The shrews attached to a favorable evolutionary line. Every single one of our forebears on both sides survived, they being attractive enough to locate a loving mate with whom they're loved to celebrate.
In the late 1700s, Cuvier could take heaps of bones and whip them into shapely forms not in the stones. After for the first time a theory on extinction, in which some groups of creatures became history. This raised uncomfortable implications at the time. Why would God create and destroy without reason or rhyme? This suggested an unaccountable casualness by someone unseen chain of being, which held that the world was carefully ordered for us, and that every living thing thus had a place, and fossils in rocks to find the relative rock ages that were possible. At every change in rock strata, certain fossils vanished, while in others they carried on into subsequent levels. Was extinct not only occasionally but repeatedly. Right hostile distinction, more than the biblical Noachian deluge distinction's extinction. Of course, now we see nature more for what it is. Back to the future. It no longer mattered that humans were on a one-way trip from the quantum fluke. On Nihao, Frederick walked the last mile. The world's roulette wheel was rolling 00 on what might soon be the last perfect day on Earth. And a hurricane was headed in his direction. Tsunamis washed deeper and deeper inland. Most of the internet no longer functioned. ToeQuest and Avoid were gone, their archives destroyed. Nobody had returned, his efforts at changing the future having been unsuccessful. Robert gave up his dreams of the Toe. The Toe Center on Oahu had closed. Graham finally levitated up into the air, his new refuge above the clouds. Trish #1 East energized her way to the Forbidden Island. The top dragon, Old Rascal, as #1 West, awaited them all. A rainbow appeared as the spirit of Old Grandmaster West, flying through past them as the scent on the breeze and the courage to act. The votes had been counted. Rascal had now engaged the last working silo. Trish keyed in the codes and nodded to him, saying, "Would you like to do the honors?" "Yes, for unto me falls life's last duty. Nature will now have to contend with herself. It will be fire versus ice, dragon against dragon, just as shown by the picture on the Great Wall. However, this could well be the end for all of us." "Or not if it works," she answered. "Or global warming will be defeated by the worldwide dust in the atmosphere. The years will tell. It is our only hope." Rascal pressed the button. Nuclear missiles were being fired deep into the heart of the Yellowstone caldera. At least 5 surrounding states and 2 Canadian provinces would be completely destroyed. Yet, winter would come, probably bringing its own array of problems. But then, after that, could spring be far behind?
Back in Hawaii in 1970, a rainbow was about to appear. Something that was truly only in the eye of the beholder, for it appeared only where it was for each particular person. "Strange," Pasiona said. "I felt as if I was experiencing the rainbow for the first time." "Perhaps you were," I replied, unknowing of nobody at that time. But now I realized that I had seen him whizzing by on his way to the CMBR and the butterflies on the edge of forever, so I wrote, "Some may ask of life, how does one find love? Life says, be still, don't look far or above, stop, let love's butterfly alight on you, for that's the touch that romance is made of. The rose is the flower that the bee cruises, meeting there the butterfly that love chooses. They unfold the petals of the blossom, and drink the nectar of love's sweet juices. The scent of plumeria perfumed the night airs ever more intensely, drenching us in its fragrance as we went to sleep to enjoy our new all-night cable channel of dreams. The mountaintop retreat granted serenity in a crazy world, but Okinawa soon called for an Army supply system update, and so I picked up the tapes and 2 first-class tickets, one for me and one for the tapes to have their own seat, for I could never let them out of my sight for even a millisecond. I had taken a course in security and military intelligence and been granted a high-level clearance and had to carry a pistol. Of course, I even had to take the computer tapes to the bathroom with me, washing them and my hands as well. So we put the tapes in the overhead storage bin as Pasiona settled into the seat next to mine. During the flight, I read a book on anti-gravity. I couldn't put it down. I asked my companion, "What's holding this airplane up?" For she was excellent in science. "A wing and a prayer," she replied. One of Austin's wilder theories of everything, fundamental possibility exists and is the ultimate basis of reality, and has always existed since nothing can become of nothing. It is fundamentally every possibility at once in superposition. Note that a fundamental particular state of something was totally impossible, for how could the choice have been made? A fundamental state of nothingness was totally impossible too, for there is indeed something that our consciousness interprets. Fundamental possibility projects our local reality, the penultimate reality, via electrons, quarks and the such, and or strings, a hologram, consciousness or whatever. All is as it is in our local reality because it works. It gets down the reason that the all can have no limits, or it isn't the all. So it must be infinite and eternal, doing everything. That there is nothing to make it of still haunts. But we do observe a balance of polarity of charge, matter and antimatter, a weak and a strong nuclear force, and gravity's negative potential energy, said to balance the positive kinetic energy of stuff, not to mention fields making particles and particles making fields. So, there seems to be a balance of opposites, which is perhaps a zero balance. Nothing cannot be because it is perfectly unstable.
In a Theory of Everything forum long ago, in the 9th century, Abu Nasr Farabi wrote, "Vague and unrefined did the secrets of existence remain. Unpierced did that highly revered pearl remain. Each person said something according to his reason, yet untold did the point which was of essence remain." And Abul Hassan Karkwani replied in the forum in the 11th century, "The internet was slow in those days. The primordial secrets neither you know nor I. The words of the puzzle neither you can read nor I. Your discourse and mine are behind the curtain. When the curtain falls, neither you remain nor I." But they didn't know how far science would advance and that we would actually be able to see the curtain and derive the truth from it, so we may say more. "I've been thinking about fundamental possibility," I said to Passiona. "It solves a lot of problems. It's also what I've been leaning toward lately, although the wild toe revelations from imaginations have clarified it." "Like what?" she inquired. "Like how the penultimate reality, the fundamental substance, could still have existed forever, or at least in its potential form, and how its particular form was specifically one that worked instead of one that didn't." "It existed forever because time was born with it from possibility, the both of them always there as potential," she replied. "Yes, there was just what is rather than what was not. For a nothingness could never be, for there is surely something here, yet it need balance to nothing, since there is no other source." "The fundamental substance was the most probable of all possibilities," she surmised. "Yes, and perhaps it was the only possibility that would work. Or the others fizzled and failed by going nowhere, sort of a survival of the fittest of all the scenarios of consequences of what could serve as reality. And fundamental possibility had to exist, rather than not, for that's all there could be. Yet I'm still trying to adjust to this new way of thinking."
True, imagination chimed in. Fundamental possibility is a bit like your mind sifting through eventualities of possible actions, only this possibility forms substances. It may even be forming some now, here and there, but on a lesser basis than when the universe expanded, for then all was wide open. Or it is that even low probability event of huge bangs must ever and eventually happen. Of course, this possibility must remain simple in a way, that being the price of being fundamental, but you, a 13 billion year complex composite, are much more advanced, and that is where real and meaningful life occurs. If fundamental possibility could talk, which it can't, for it is not a system, it might say something much the same as you would now in your quest for the theory of everything. I'll follow every single avenue, whether it's brightly lit or a dark alley, exploring one ways, no ways, and dead ends, until cornered where the truth is hiding. And now you've arrived in that dark corner, and so you can live life better by knowing who you are. Some simple substance gave rise to everything, chosen as probable above the rest, knowing at once that it would function well, the most promising, the possible ones. However, unlike the simple beginnings, the possibilities of the complexities of everything are unbounded, and that's the greatest thing. As to how complex, there is no limit, except perhaps when it forms a black hole, and the smallest is the Planck distance, so size is absolute, not relative. All in all, you are the lucky one standing atop the pinnacle of time, change, form, and substance. Life is waiting when you have the right attitude. You will come to not even know what sorrow is. They continued on through the entangled forest. "Our minds do seem to make the actual from the possible, don't they?" she proposed. "Well, possibility was our birthplace, so perhaps we retain a version of it," he answered. "We create thought. The underwritten underwriter of this creational wave of matter covers all loss and liability, guaranteeing payment, by dipping into possibility. What random, unsystematic event became, so unmethodically, quite arbitrary, so lame, unplanned, undirected, so casual, uncasual made, as some indiscriminate, non-specific one bait of haphazard stray that erratic chance gave.
It was the in-between time of the trips of delivering the Army's supply system, and so I finally came down from the Hawaiian mountaintop to do some real work. And so I busied myself writing computer programs, surfing, taking a graduate course in some stuff that I already knew, selling seashells by the beach, and starting to seriously study the toe as well as her ankle and her knee. It was the early 70s, still of the counterculture era, and I was in my early 20s, although it is now the 00s as I write this, and I'm wondering what kind of name the future will use to refer to this 00 decade. During the coming tens, or the teens perhaps, yet another problem decade, they might say, back in the noughts, too old-fashioned. I mean back in the 00s, nope. It was the zeros, maybe. The theory of everything was finally solved in the ToeQuest forums. I've settled on the UOs as a name, since it is a time of unease. But I will have to get Prof Pat to work on it. For meanwhile, in this story back then, he was starting on the road towards a grand professorship by taking accounting 101, the abacus. I was as free as a quark in the Army's nucleus when I was drafted into it, which wasn't too bad, since the strong force weakens near the quarks and lets them roam a bit. But I was soon promoted and projected into an electron, as Prof Pat's theory figures, and thus much freer to roam the world on the Army trips. Also, at about this time, Greybeard was heading for India, smartly taking his retirement early, before he had to work for the rest of his life, at a time when he was the most able. He now runs Australia's electrical system. Frederick and Nobody were on their way to a peace conference, but not their own, for their dispute was but a minor disagreement about whether nothing existed, but to resolve a battle between a country's north and south. Why does a country's east hardly ever go to war with its west? Well, the weeks went by, the seashells selling briskly, and the punched cards not having any hanging chad problems. And so I picked up the computer tapes to deliver to Vietnam, which was not my favorite destination. I decided to spice up the trip by taking a vacation from my life in Hawaii afterwards. Who would do that? But they gave me a month every year, by side-tripping to India, Pakistan, and Tibet, hoping to visit the mother of all mountaintops, the Himalayas. Around this time, Prof Pat actually began his 30-year experiments towards the theory that 3 interwoven superstrings were the quarks of the proton that give rise to all the sights and sounds of the twilight zone in which we live.
Meanwhile, McKirkpatrick was beginning his search for the one of consciousness, having found that 2 is 1 too many and that 3 is a crowd. Michael is often born again, although his mothers never really enjoyed going through this, and he did once find the secret of the one in a past life, but forgot it upon rebirth, for he was always very young when he was born. Currently, his house in England is flooding and floating away. Lucky that he mostly lives on a floatable lounge chair, and so he may have to flee to Turkey's hot climate to avoid these serious effects of global warming. I bid adieu to the archipelago and friends, saying I'll be back, long before Arnold made it popular, and then flew into the setting sun, but knew I wouldn't get burned since it would soon be night. However, the sun, which plummets like a stone in the tropics, was soon brought back up again, rising in the west, of all places, from the plane's progress. I should have gotten off while the world had stopped, but I did throw my bottle of whiskey out the window. It turns out that, in the future, Nobody had just finished his investigation of the Guardian of Forever, a megalithic monument found in the Star Trek episode, City on the Edge of Forever. It was a device placed by who knows whom that revealed all of history at a glance of near-universal speed. Luckily, Mr. Spock had recorded some of it on a tricorder that was built of subconscious neurons that could slow down time from its all-at-once superposition of all the possible pasts and futures. Dr. McCoy had stepped into the past and had changed the future by not letting a pacifist leader, Joan Collins, die. And so, Hitler had time to complete his heavy water experiments and to develop the atom bomb, and eventually rule the world. Such are the whims of fate that our world is subject to, kind of like the butterfly effect. This encounter was to send Nobody on the most super toe quest that any of us have ever attempted, going where no man has gone before, no, not to the ladies' room. A quest that to me and others is really quite amazing to follow. While the Guardian was the answer to our own galactic history, it was not the ultimate answer, but its workings were a good start.
I landed in Japan and took a commuter plane to Osaka near an Air Force base. There was no first-class seat from here on out, just a kind of chair in a cargo jet, one that carried tanks in the rear. It was so noisy that I wouldn't have been able to hear my iPod if it had been invented then. Longbin's airstrip was crowded, and so I maneuvered between many whirling tail rotors to a helicopter leaving for the nearby base. That night, some rockets landed at the other end of the base, and so someone fearlessly nicknamed Rascal Puff, an actual combat soldier, was sent out to quell the attack. He was rather impervious to injury, since he mostly resided in the 4th, 5th, and 6th dimensions, places that bullets usually missed by a mile or infinity. I remembered seeing posters back in New York saying that gravity is the 4th dimension, and so now I know it had to be him. Having made my first delivery of tapes that morning, a warrant officer then flew me 100 miles or more over the jungle to a remote base, noting that a previous courier's helicopter had been shot down. "I know," I replied. "That was one of my predecessors. I fly all the routes now." Even before that incident, the civil service workers hadn't really wanted this delivery job, for they had families or had gotten tired of it, and of course after the incident, didn't want any part of it whatsoever, but I saw it as adventure, and I still do. In Saigon's airport, I ran into who I now realize must have been Frederick being whisked away to the peace conference in a limo. I booked a flight to India for the next day and watched the conference on TV at my hotel. Frederick was showing a map of North and South Vietnam and was making great headway with the delegates. But he had to be honest and tell them that the North and South were forever oppositional, and that the twain could meet only as East meets West in transition. Hopes dimmed, but then nobody appeared out of thin air, having ridden waves of time displacement from the Guardian that were dilated by the delay of all the superpositions, and told the Vietnamese of both sides how they, as North and South, could get very close, infinitely close, and that they were much alike as well by meeting at the equator. But alas, their animosities were too deep, and the peace table collapsed as all the mad dogs went off howling into the night. Now in India, I came across Greg Isaac Newton, who I now see was really greybeard, one who lived by his wits there. He was talking to the monkey man about anything and everything the theory of. Lloyd was ever busy helping the Irish fight the British, while R.P. Bibra, living back in his wild days, was shooting at Lloyd. I rode on the roof of a train towards Pakistan and later observed Greybeard buying some liquids at the duty-free shop while I waited to fly toward the mountains of Tibet. I climbed the Himalayas and complained to the wise Lama up there that life could be hell. He said, "Get lost, go make a heaven of hell, and then me tell. The door is never shut on the prison cell, so why would you ever want to stay inside it when the door is always so wide open?" He also gave me a piece of paper that had "All is three" written on it, which I couldn't figure out. He wouldn't tell me. I just came across the other day, realizing that it meant matter in motion through space.
In the beginning, or rather, in the absence of a true beginning, there exists an eternal and fundamental substance that serves as the foundation of all reality. Some may call it the quantum foam or strings, while others may refer to it as possibility. However, I prefer to call it energy. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed, and therefore it has no beginning or end. It is the building block of elementary particles and forces. Energy has always existed, either being made from nothing or continuously being created. It is the only non-composite entity that is possible, making it the ultimate source of everything. All higher complexities, including the mind and matter, are constructed upon the flexible base of energy. It is stronger than Atlas, who stood on the back of a turtle, as energy has no lower foundation to rely on. It upholds not only the world, but everything that exists, including the mind and matter. Energy is omnipresent, present everywhere, even in the vacuum. It is the absolute reality, the ultimate ground of all existence, the mother of all reality and the eternal. At the fundamental level, energy is all that exists. There is nothing lower than energy, as it is self-sustaining. It is what it is, just like the statement, "I am what I am." Those who refer to energy as the ground of determination are correct, but they make a mistake when they attribute personality or characteristics to it. Energy is not a person, being, alien, or superbeing. It does not possess temperament or any other composite qualities. It is far from being fundamental and absolute. While there may be higher beings such as aliens, they are not the ultimate or absolute. They are composite like us, and are dependent on and exist after the ground of ultimate reality or energy.
Anyway, this energy is a simple thing, being such a fundamentally low building block. But this does not preclude the possibility of it being very close at hand in its basic and fundamental non-composite form. We learn from physics that everything in the universe seems to be connected, entangled with everything else, especially at this basic level of energy. For example, in photon pairs that are created and become separated by distances far larger than the speed of light could traverse, either photon snaps too in an instant when the other photon is randomly polarized and changes its own polarization to match it precisely. It is as if the two distant photons are still the same particle in some other dimension, or that they remain connected in some way forever. Well, it has been said that when an electron vibrates, the universe rumbles. This connection of everything to everything may provide some rudimentary perception in and of itself that is tapped into by the brain. We might even define energy as having some awareness itself. This is made ever more plausible by the fact that energy does indeed give rise to all that we know, to all mind and consciousness, as well as to all matter. Quotes used because matter may turn out just to be some swirling energy that gives the appearance of solidity. At any rate, the capability for conscious awareness does seem to be a natural, like mass or energy, but it definitely requires a brain process, and it surely comes last, not first, after the brain takes its requisite time to perform an analysis. Could it be that everything is really globally connected in some other dimension, although still as real as could be, but projected in our 3 dimensions, the extra dimension being something like all possibilities existing at once in superposition, just as in the quantum world? Anyway, these were my early thoughts.
After leaving Tibet, I rented a motorcycle and headed for Calcutta, carrying some liquid refreshments on the back to resell, via Greybeard's method of wholesale and retail. I heard that nobody had stepped into the Guardian of Forever again and had gone into the past, back toward the beginning, being careful not to touch or do anything that would change history or the future. But he sneezed, and so now our alphabet has only 26 letters, some having to do double duty, this causing many TOE forum posts not to be understood. Furthermore, it greatly delayed the discovery of the digit 0. Back in Hawaii, I attended a lecture given by Professor Pat at the university on his loss of energy of something like 1 billion universes, during which he wondered where all the energy had gone. Meanwhile, he had been taking pep pills to make up for it. Pat's 30 years theory of 000, 111 was moving right along, he having had just taken a month or so to choose a high-tech method of presenting his theory, finally settling on a #2 pencil. Currently, he is solving the Big Bang via 2 oppositely rotating yin-yangs of matter and antimatter. Not a bad theory, actually. I had to attend a barracks inspection, in which our short, 5 feet tall captain stood on a chair and checked for dust on a high cabinet. But it was clean, for I'd wiped it while not having much to do beforehand, since my bunk was always perfect since I'd never slept in it. In fact, I'd never even registered into the barracks, having found a bed frame and having gotten fresh linens from the quartermaster. And so I even had to add my name to the latrine detail so no one would wonder why it was never there. How come someone's measurement of height is always tall and never short? And why is a doorway size always so many inches wide, even when it's narrow? Nobody, did you hiccup in the time machine? Lately, like now in 2012, I have discovered that depth is the 3rd dimension, and have also cured myself of the fear of heights. But now, I'm afraid of widths, since my stomach is growing. I have also discovered that the base of reality is only 2-dimensional, but upon shining a spiritual laser-type light through it, the 3rd dimension is projected as in a hologram. I am now rearranging the waves of my interference pattern to make it look like I am much thinner. Back in the past, the white-gloved hand of the MP waved us into the fort, and we rode up to the mountaintop, stopping along the way to look behind a bush and see a sheer drop down to the licky-licky highway, where a bunch of toy cars were rolling along. Darkness fell like an anvil, and we could see the lights of Pearl City off to the west beyond the Punch Bowl, the beautiful and green National Cemetery of the Pacific. The Hawaiian alphabet has only 12 letters, 6 vowels, and 6 consonants. Nobody. Did anything else happen? We cooked some chicken fingers and buffalo wings. This doesn't make sense, nobody. On the hibachi and then settled down for dessert. I caressed Pasiona's tresses in romantic rhythm to the contented sighs she sent toward heaven. She slumbered where the grass fledged the cliff, half awake or asleep in love's peaceful dream. as I loved and was loved in completeness. The earthly world, with all of its foolishness, work, hurry and scurry, pain and worry, did fast fade away into nothingness.
But it wasn't the theory of nothing that we were working on, but the toe up to the thigh bone. So we assessed ourselves floating around in a far arm of the galaxy on a spinning globe in the middle of nowhere and said, "What the hell?" and stared up into the night sky, begging it to reveal its secrets. The evening caressed us in its gentle way of softness and warmth, but there is no sex allowed in TOE forums. So we implored the night, in this gentle darkness and quiet stillness, to yield her dearest secrets, to unveil before us the full truth of what she was. Much we already knew from twilight dreams that bordered on insight, and from Keats' poems unveiling truth and beauty, but we asked with our most inquiring looks and yearning hearts, to gain more knowledge of the deep mysteries of all that was. Above us, fires burned the stars away. Below us, the earth turned under our feet. Within us, unworded dreams haunted our souls. Around us, the night poured blackness on the ground. So we asked of the powers of the night, not immortality, for that would have been too much, nor youth, for we already had it, but for the insight to see through the dark and on into the life of things, of what all things were made. I couldn't have ended with a preposition, an error, saying what all things are made of. However, if some know-it-all ever calls you on it, just add, "You dumb shit," after the preposition upon pretending to correct it, and to explain nobody's wanderings, as the poor lady had to say to the upper crust, after, "Where you from? Where you from, bitches?" The night answered that all was as it was because it had to be. Well, that was difficult to understand, but we did retain a presence of the night within us, vibrating with its rhythm and resonance. We sensed a soft sweep across our heartstrings, for we were willing spirits, and were totally undistracted by the day's bright noise. In harmony, we realized that we each held within ourselves the seed of the other, that yin reaches climax, then retreats in yang's favor in a cyclic movement of rotational symmetry, for a rounded life is the blend of yin and yang.
We saw Greybeard returning home to Australia, which is not the world's largest island, for it is a continental landmass. Greenland is the largest island and will actually become green soon when global warming transforms it. As for the longest island, that would be Long Island. Other names of places that took 0 seconds to think of are Iceland and Newfoundland. Greybeard told us that he would have to turn upside down after he'd passed the equator, so as to become right side up in the land down under. What a joker, or is it true? The Philippines was hot and humid even in December, and so one had to make friends with the blood, sweat and tears, for only a trickle of water came from the faucets and showers. At night I noticed that Orion had 3 hunting dogs, not 2, and there were probably even more dogs south of the moon where Greybeard lives on Google Earth at S2728.775 E15302 545. Furthermore, I saw the North Star and the Southern Cross in the same sky, but the looking up at this great conjunction caused me to trip hard over a small long bump in the dirt labelled the Equator. And I did indeed turn upside down. Getting up, I stood astride the equator, one of my brain hemispheres in the northern hemisphere and the other in the southern. I'm not sure how to tell Frederick about this. On our free time, we travelled deep into the jungle and met a tribe who had no previous human contact, although they had heard that there was no point to the first dimension. They kept busy hunting and food gathering, living a 168-hour work week. I gave them the gift of the digit 0, so they could learn to relax and do nothing sometimes. So far, they only had the digits 1, 2, few, several, and many. Their only real question was about Paris Hilton. More seriously, I was stunned when they unveiled some ancient words carved into rock. The only purpose of life is to be finding your own meaning therein, but some questions still remain, such as what is life and its point. To find the answer, one must live it fully with goodness.